Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 118 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net, and we have a very special guest with us today, the architect of Sifted, Brent Phillips.
Hello.
Not only that, Brent today comes bearing gifts.
I do?
You do. Last night, you set up GameFace on iTunes.
I was like,
That's a big deal, though.
I was like, shit, is it Shane's birthday?
No, that was like a week and a half ago. But Brent set up Sifted, or GameFace, so it's going to be on iTunes in the very near future. We submitted it. Brent, how long does it usually take before Apple gets back to you on that?
Like a day.
Okay.
It has happened as soon as like 2 hours, and it has taken like 3 days.
Okay. So
they manually review it, so it's whenever they do it.
Gotcha. Well, GameFace will be on iTunes very soon. It'll be on like a 4-day delay, kind of like how our Patreon is set up. Once it goes live, I'll alert all you guys on our Twitter and on the site to go and review the podcast. That's a big deal, right?
That's very, very important. Even if you don't listen to it on even if you don't listen to it on iTunes, leaving that review is how they rate like their current rankings, and then like if you get a bunch when it first starts, like when we're going to start like tomorrow or whatever, then you might get featured or whatever. You know, it's a very big deal for how much internal promotion you get. Yeah,
because we could end up being like the hot new gaming podcast for like a week or two.
And if you're that for just like a week or two, that's millions of eyes on it. So that's a big deal.
That is a big deal. It could really help us. So again, we'll alert you once it goes up on iTunes, and hopefully you guys can all pitch in and go over and review and say very nice things.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know. I think overall we'll probably end up getting a good review out of the gate because it'll be our fans that are handling it. But ultimately it will probably come down over time. You get the bitter internet mob in there who will disagree with like one thing we say in a 3-hour show and be like, I hate this, I hate this.
There's going to be definitely some of that. There's nothing you can do about it.
That's the interweb. So anyway, we have Brent with us today. Probably should tell you why Brent's here. Matt ended up going and getting a second opinion on his medical issue and actually went yesterday and had a procedure done. He is down and out for today, and in fact, it appears that he is going to have his major procedure that he's been kind of waiting on next week. So Matt is going to be out for a while. If you guys get an extra minute, I recommend going on Twitter and maybe wishing him well. I think he's M. Kyle something or other. Actually, pop up the other Chiron so they can see it, so they can go and bid. There you go. Yeah, just M. Kyle.
It's not me.
Yeah. If you have a minute, go and wish Matt well. Anytime someone goes through something like something like this, support means a lot, and I know Matt would really appreciate it from you guys. So wish him well. He is going to be out for a few weeks, so we are going to have guests rolling here for the next month or so, which is exciting. We're going to have new people on the show, some new perspectives, which is good. So, Brent, welcome.
Thanks.
You ready to do this?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. So it is slow as hell in video games right now, but there's enough cultural stories, I think, to kind of prop up the show for the next few weeks. Hopefully the games start coming out. We are going to talk about one game towards the end of the show today, but for the most part, we're going to talk about general topics today. And probably the biggest topic related to games that isn't just kind of within our little hive of hardcore gamers is the fact that games are under attack again by the government. After the horrible shooting in Florida, people were kind of looking for something to place the blame on. And
the word scapegoat comes to mind.
Deflection, like the graphic says.
Yeah.
And what's happened is that several congressmen have come out and said that they think violent video games are to blame for the kids because the GOP is essentially trying to say
anything other than the guns.
Anything but the guns. So it's saying it's a mental health issue. It's media that's causing the problems and making kids go crazy. Things have actually gone so far this week that a GOP he's like a state congressman, I believe, from Rhode Island, has proposed a tax on M-rated games. So if you buy an M-rated game, you pay an extra $10 for that game.
Jesus.
So things are going freaking haywire right now. And I know video game violence does it cause violence in the real world is a topic that's been discussed a bunch of times. We've done it on this show before. We did it on Invisible Walls probably 100 times. Lots of podcasts have talked about it. But we haven't talked about it for a while. And
Yeah.
so every time this comes up, I try to go back and look at research. Great job with the footage there, Sam. Every time something like this happens, I go back and look and see if there's new research. And because sometimes I'm like, okay, well, maybe the politicians have actually found a new study that's different, or there's now a definitive determination from psychologists and psychiatrists that it actually does affect behavior. And in fact, a lot of the politicians over the last week or so have been saying, oh, there's these new studies, and this study says that there is a link between gaming violence and violence in the real world. So I went out and started digging around. I actually did some frickin' research for GameFace, believe it or not. And essentially the study that the GOP is pointing to is from a study in August of 2015.
Okay.
So it's a few years old, not quite, two and a half years or so. And what that study found by the American Psychological Association was that the research demonstrated a link between violent video game use and both increases in aggressive behavior and decreases in pro-social behavior, empathy, and moral engagement. And then the American Academy of Pediatrics in July of 2016, so an even more recent survey, said that video games should not use human or other living targets or awards pointing for killing, or award points for killing, because this teaches children to associate pleasure and success with their ability to cause pain and suffering to others. So that's not really a study. That's more, in my opinion, that's more of an opinion.
Also, just to couch the American Academy of Pediatrics, they're the ones that like the main thing that they comment on is for parents is like screen time.
Right.
And like every year they make it like worse and worse, saying the screen time changes your brain. And it's like, of course it does. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad.
Right. So it could be for the good.
And
if you're living in 2018.
Right. I mean, and there's a case to be made that, there's absolutely too much of it. And screen time in lieu of spending time with your kids, of course, that's detrimental.
It's terrible.
But it's not necessarily the screen time is the problem. It's the not spending time with your kids that's the problem.
Right.
Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that, like, these guys are super hardcore. Like, they're almost one of those parent associations that, like, does this.
They just want your kids to go and play in the park every day.
They're very unscientific, is how I feel about it.
They're acting on feeling instead of fact, is what you're saying.
I feel like they cherry pick data to support whatever they feel.
Do you know where their funding comes from? Because that's what you always got to do. You always got to follow the money, because that's why you'll figure out where that opinion is coming from. So that'd be interesting. Maybe somebody can Google it and figure out where their funding comes from. I wouldn't be surprised if it came from the GOP, in all honesty.
At least somewhat government.
Yep. And so overall, between those two studies, the summary of the results was that they revealed a significant link between being exposed to violent media in general and aggressive behavior, aggressive thoughts, and angry feelings. So anytime this stuff comes out and people start pointing to studies like this, other scientists start to do their own studies, or they start pointing to other studies that contradict that. And that's exactly what happened. Whitney DeCamp, he's an associate professor of sociology at Western Michigan University. He said that, sure, some studies have revealed a connection between kids playing violent games and violent behavior, but there's a problem with looking at those two things in a vacuum. Kids who like to play brutal video games may have a predisposition towards aggression already, he said.
Right, it's not necessarily causal.
Right.
Just like if you like violent stuff, then yeah, you're going to like violent video games.
You're going to like video games.
But playing violent video games doesn't necessarily make you violent.
Exactly. Let's see, and then he did his own study this study is from 2008, though, so it's older, from a Delaware school survey, which included responses from 6,567 students. They were 8th graders, so old enough to play at least semi-violent games, not old enough to buy an M-rated game yet.
Probably old enough that they are playing M-rated but shouldn't be, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. DeCamp factored out the propensity to play violent video games due to natural attraction to brutality, along with other factors such as gender and family relations. He discovered that playing violent games, no matter how bloody, did not predict violent behavior. And then another professor, Christopher Ferguson, associate professor and co-chairman of the Department of Psychology at Stetson University, supported the same view. he goes so far as to suggest that violent games may help reduce societal violence rather than increase it. And here's his quote. Basically, by keeping young males busy with things they like, and this would include everything from playing sports and collecting stamps to playing first-person shooters, you keep them off the streets and out of trouble.
Yeah.
And then he added that newer studies with better methods have typically failed to find much evidence of a connection between brutal games and even minor aggressive acts, let alone violence. And then there's a study from February 2016, which looked at violent criminal offenses in the weeks after the release of popular violent video games. Tracking both sales and crime rates, the authors discovered that general societal violence decreased in the weeks after the appearance of a new popular title.
I like that.
So that, I mean, it totally backs up what he's saying, that it's actually keeping kids out of trouble because they're not out in the streets being hooligans. They're inside playing at video games where they're safe, and they're safe from harming others. And that both professors are saying that obviously this doesn't rule out longer-term effects. That's the thing. No one really knows what the long-term effects are because these studies have only been done in the last 15 years max.
Yeah.
So that is kind of a caveat. But both professors ultimately say that they view games as having cathartic effects, allowing players to safely release their aggression instead of actually building it up. And then Ferguson goes on to say that he has skepticism for the other studies, and said that a group of 238 scholars asked the American Psychological Association to retire its outdated and problematic statements on video game violence. So 238 scholars have come out.
When did that happen?
That happened...
I just meant, was that recent or was that 2008?
No, it was in 2017.
Okay.
So last year, a group of 238 scholars asked the American Psychological Association to retire its outdated and problematic statements on video game violence. So, who do you believe here? I mean, because what you have is you have these kind of parental groups who are, in some cases, making leaps of logic, not even using data to put these messages out. And then you have the people who are actually relying on studies saying that we cannot find any causal link between games and real violence. Who do you believe? Do you believe the people who use data, or do you believe the people who are just like, I think that's...
If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have said it's ridiculous. But, like, I don't know. My kids watch a show where people, like, karate kick people, and they run around karate kicking everybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's not crazy to assume that people see stuff and then act on it, but to imply that it's making you into, like, a more violent person is crazy. Like, I'm much more apt to believe that it's getting that aggression out, like... I mean, like, it's hard to remember when you're a teen, but, like, Jesus, it's so frustrating. Like, you have no control over your life. Like, I don't know, maybe you didn't make a sports team or whatever, and, like, you don't know how to handle your feelings because you're, like, 13. And, like, it's so easy to get angry about stuff. And then you have this game where, A, you can be good at it, and B, you have full control over that world. And yeah, you can get out some of that aggression. Like, I totally believe that that's a positive factor on that kid's life versus just taking that aggression and not knowing how to deal with it.
Another stat that I came across that I wish I could quote, I did not include it in my notes, was that they went back and looked at mass murderers and what percentage of those people actually played games at all or played violent games. And I don't have the exact figure here, but it was extremely low, like less than 20% of mass murderers ever played video games, let alone violent video games. The shooter in Florida did not play games at all. Mental health certainly is an issue. I mean, that is certainly a problem. Yeah. But this kid he was adopted. His mother died like 3 months ago. He had no one left. He was schluffed onto some other family who instituted these rigid rules. He had been a problem for years leading up to that. Had been expelled from school. Kid never played games. He just had psychological issues. And I feel like, once again, video games are becoming the scapegoat because people don't want to deal with what the real problems are because they're not easy problems to solve.
No, and they're an easy scapegoat because a lot of the voters are of an age where they didn't play games when they were little, or the games that they did play were like Mario and stuff. So like they never experienced violent video games in that way, and so they're just like, yeah, whatever, tax them, I don't care.
Then you wonder how much sincerity there is in this. Is this false outrage because the GOP is receiving a ton of money from the NRA? I mean, that's really what it's coming down to. And in order for things to change in our country and actually deal with what the real issue is, in a lot of people's estimation, you would have to stop accepting that, or they wouldn't even be there to stop accepting it. The NRA would just stop giving it, because suddenly these politicians who they were essentially bribing to make sure that gun control laws are never passed, well, if they bail on that initiative, then what's the point of the NRA giving them money? So, again, like I said earlier, always follow the money. If there's something going on that you can't understand, always follow the money. And not just in this case, but pretty much anything in life. That's how it works. If there's something that comes up and you're like, man, why in a million years would that decision be made? I can guarantee you it revolves around money in some way. And then you had the town hall where the kids asked one of the senators, like, can you tell me right now you won't take any more money from the GOP? And he was just like, I won't tell you that. I am taking money, or take money from the NRA. Yeah. He's like, I'll not tell you that. I am taking money from the NRA. So it's a shame that for whatever reason, games and movies and television are always the scapegoat for this. It is the easiest answer, and they go to it time and again, no matter how much data there is, how many studies there are, no matter how many times it's been debunked, it's this easy thing to go back to. And again, I agree with you. I think it's because, at least on the GOP side, they know that a large portion of their base is older. They're people in their 60s and 70s who never played video games, and a lot of them hate video games because they think they're this weird distraction that they don't understand, and it's a waste of time when kids could be reading a book or whatever. And it's easy for them to do this, to put it on games, because a lot of their base are like, yeah, that's right. Like, I've always hated those things, and I don't get them, and that's got to be part of the problem. And it's a very...
Well, it's more nuanced than that. Like, to say that playing violent video games when you're of a formative age might skew how you view morals, like, maybe. I don't know.
I absolutely would agree with that.
Is it going to lead to you shooting up a school? No.
Well, it's just like this week, Trump is in a press conference. He goes, we should probably look at, like, rating systems for video games and movies. Like, what planet have you been living on? We've had ratings for both of those for decades now.
I mean, and the thing is about the tax on M-rated games is, I think,
that's insane.
That's really inappropriate. If you want to be stricter about who can buy M-rated games and be stricter about, punishments for selling to underage kids, like, fine. I think the rating system has a point to be there.
I agree.
But to raise taxes on violent video games really is a First Amendment violation. They're immediately going to get sued as soon as they do that.
Think about this. Suddenly, the ESRB becomes the gatekeeper to revenue.
I know, that's bananas.
That is absurd. Suddenly, these gamers who sit in Philadelphia at the ESRB's office,
which is not a government institution at all.
Could control whether a game is a success or not. Because think about it, if you're asking $10 extra for a game, that's a harder sell.
Yeah.
And suddenly, that game that's borderline teen or M, you give it the M, it just opens the door to all kinds of shady stuff.
They would pull the game back and then change it.
It could amount in games not being censored per se, but being self-censored by publishers saying, well, we don't want this to get an M rating. So this scene or that scene that you have a problem with, we're just going to cut it out, or we're going to dial it back. It starts messing with the art of video games. There's so much wrong with this story. And, I've talked about this so many times, and I never get less passionate about it. I never will. And I think what a part of it is that it happens once every, year or 14 months or whatever. And it just lets that anger die down inside me just enough, so when it happens again, it just gets stoked up and I get all fired up about it again. But it's asinine. So you made a great point when you walked in today. What did you say? You said, that's funny because these same video games, movies, and TV shows are also being aired in every country around the world. Why are we the ones that have 20 people getting killed in 5 minutes?
Why is it not happening? It's a very easy answer.
Why is it not happening anywhere else?
Everyone else has
everything's the same. But we're the ones who have mass shootings, literally, on a weekly basis. It's not the games. There's some other factor, and depending on your stance on guns, you're going to say it's one thing, you're going to say it's another. And look, I've made a point on this show to not get political on GameFace. And we don't just generally talk about Trump or any other crazy stuff that's going on. we'll only talk about this stuff when it's related to games. And I hope you guys have appreciated that over the last 2 years, that we've tried to keep politics out of GameFace. But when politics starts sticking their business into games, that's when we're going to talk about it. And I'm not going to pull punches when I do discuss it. I'm not going to dance around and not share my real opinion on something because I may offend somebody who is a Republican. I'm just not. This is how I feel about it. Take it for what it's worth. I did use data to back up my arguments. I'm not just sitting here flailing around about it. So, GOP, stay out of games. Leave us alone. Like, we don't need you. We've been going along fine. We have a rating system. We were proactive in creating a rating system before you demanded it. Granted, it was smart to do that because you don't want to let the government do that in the first place. But the industry has been very responsible in trying to keep these games out of kids' hands. If there's really a problem, if you ask me, it's that retailers need to be held more accountable. There needs to be maybe something put in place where parents cannot buy M-rated games for their 8-year-old kid. Like, an 8-year-old kid should not be playing Grand Theft Auto 5. He should not be playing Call of Duty, but we all know that just put on your headset once playing any of these games, you figure out very quickly there's a lot of parents out there that are more than willing to give their kids whatever game they want so that they don't have to be a parent. Yeah. And I've had an issue with that. I've talked about that many times when discussing this topic, is that a lot of times it comes down to the parents not being parents. And that's the problem. And you brought that up earlier, that it's parenting. And it's their job to make sure their kids aren't playing this stuff and that they're a part of their lives with just screen time in general, as you were talking about earlier. Yeah. Monitoring how much time they spend with screens, what they're actually consuming when they are spending time with screens.
I don't know. I wouldn't be so quick to blame the parents in this either, because like you get into the situation where your kid comes to you and he says, all my friends are playing Grand Theft Auto, which is probably true. Can I play it too? And
you're a parent. What will you do when that happens?
I'm going to buy him Grand Theft Auto.
You are?
I would much rather him be shown violent video games early than be like left out at school. I think that's so much fucking worse, especially as a contributing factor to shooting up a school. I think being not included is probably a bigger thing. And like,
because I have a feeling that is one of the big triggers for this kid in Florida.
Yeah,
the fact that he was ostracized from the social circles at school. People thought he was weird. He had a bad home life. That all coalesces into anger.
Well, it's not that. I just like totally lost my train of thought.
Well, you were talking about how you're willing to buy your kid Grand Theft Auto, which I'm surprised to hear.
Okay. Well, so it's not that I want him to, but I would rather, of those two evils, I would rather him be included. The problem isn't that I'm letting my kid play Grand Theft Auto, it's that all the parents are. And so you're right, it's on the retailers, it's on the console manufacturers to like just enter an age for the kid when you set up the console. Or when you put in the credit card, like that the kid's probably not going to be the one doing it, and just say like, this is only usable for this. And
so better parental controls on consoles.
Yeah, or just get to the point where they can't even purchase it, and then it's not like making the parents the bad guys is a bad situation for the parents in every way. It's because half the parents will just be the good guys because they don't care. So it puts all the actual good parents in this position where they have to decide about, do I get in a fight with my kid over this? Do I screw my kid out of being part of the group? Because, like, you want to say that every day in school, kids aren't going to school and talking about PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds every fucking day? Like, of course they are. And, like, if you, like, don't let your kid play, then they're left out. And, like, that sucks. To me, that is worse.
But don't you think the root problem, though, is that...
But if none of them could have bought it in the first place... Right. And that's the issue. But you were never going to make the shitty parents more responsible, and there's too many shitty parents. It is at least 50% are just not investigating this at all, do not care. They say, here's your game.
Leave me alone.
Go to your room.
Go to your room and leave me alone. Yeah, I mean, the console has become the babysitter du jour in 2018. It's been going on for a long time, in all honesty.
Yeah, that's not new.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it probably happened. My dad was probably doing the same thing when he bought me an Atari 2600.
I mean, I was babysat by Saved by the Bell. It's no different, you know? It was just a lot less violent.
Yeah, so...
More douchey.
I mean, the one thing I will say that's really impressed me from this past week is the kids rising up.
Yeah, that is something, like, this is neither the first nor the last school shooting, but this is the first time that we've had this kind of response from the kids themselves. And that's heartening that something might actually change this time.
I mean, let's be honest. Like, these kids have grown up playing video games, spending a lot of time with their screens. In a few years, these kids are going to be voters, and I think
if they're not already in 2018, and definitely in 2020. So
and I think as time goes on, we are going to see this discussion less and less. This issue where they're trying to deflect blame towards media or games or movies and film or whatever. And I think over time, as some of these, and I hate to call them like old fogies or whatever, but that's kind of what they are, they're going to die. And they're going to go away, and their way of thinking is going to go away, and it's going to be replaced by Generation X, Generation Y, the millennials, who have a different perspective on gaming and entertainment in general. And I think ultimately, though, the best point was the one that you've made, is that why does the rest of the world play the same games, watch the same movies, watch the same TV shows, and don't have this problem in America that America has with mass shootings?
Yeah, that's a really hard,
hard to refute.
Logic thing to get around about, like, the one difference is strict gun laws, and it's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like,
but again,
I love shooting guns. I own some, but I would outlaw every one of them if I could.
Yeah, I've had some very interesting, and I don't want to go into like this turn into a gun debate or whatever, because we need to keep it on topic towards games. But I've had some very, very interesting discussions with gun nuts over the last week on social media.
But that's kind of why I think the discussion around games is so problematic, is because it gets blamed for stuff like this, which it's not guilty for. But it might be guilty for lesser stuff. Like, it might be guilty for kids being more aggressive in school, and no one's allowed to take that nuanced approach to it, because as soon as there's any study linking that in any way, it's like, well, this is why we have school shootings. It's no, that's...
Well, I think we've all seen what you said. But your kid watches a karate movie, and he runs around and starts karate chopping people.
Because he's not old enough to have the karate power.
Right. You know? But once a kid gets over 12 or 13 years old, you don't do that anymore. Like, you don't see something, and then all of a sudden start running around your living room doing it. That's something that kids do. And I think maybe that's one place where our opinions might divert a little bit on this. I don't think your kid should be playing Grand Theft Auto. And I understand that you found a reason why, but...
Do you think a 12 or 13-year-old that plays GTA 5 and sees the morally despicable characters therein doesn't go and be a dick at school? Like, if that's what he plays every day when he comes home for a few hours? Yeah. That's hard to... It is definitely a possibility. So, I mean, yes, I think it should be regulated. No, I don't think... It definitely shouldn't be taxed more. That's bullshit.
That's insane.
But, you could regulate the sale of M-rated games in a way that is not violating the First Amendment and all kinds of crazy shit.
Or completely screwing up the entire gaming industry for that matter.
Yeah. So, just the tiniest bit of foresight.
Suddenly the ESRB is they're like the gatekeepers to revenue suddenly.
Yeah.
And could be dictating the creative in games, which is insane. Which, to be honest, happens probably a little bit anyway. Because I'm sure the publishers look at, okay, how much does an E-rated game sell? How much does an E10 game sell? How much does
it's just like movies. When you release an R-rated movie versus a PG-13, you're committing to making less money.
Yeah.
Because there's just less people that can watch it.
Yep. But sometimes you do it for the art. I mean, that's the piece of art that you wanted to create and you don't want to compromise. Some will, some won't. But when you start adding an extra $10 onto the sale of an M-rated game...
Yeah, that's not a percentage change. That's like, we're dead in the water.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to be like, which game should I get? This one for 60 or this one for 70? What the hell? And that's insane.
So, well, there it is. Once again, we've discussed violence in video games affecting people in the real world. Hopefully we don't have to discuss this again for another 14 months or whatever, but it just seems to be the easy way out for people to try to make up excuses for why bad things are happening. And anytime a kid is involved for whatever reason. Notice nobody brought this up when the Vegas shooter shot up Las Vegas. No one was like, is dude playing Doom? No, he's 60-some years old. They just always assume with kids it's going to be the video games that are getting them to act out. So this story probably isn't over. This is something that's going to probably be brought up for the next 3 weeks until something else happens, because it'll probably happen again.
There will definitely be states that pass draconian bullshit.
Yep.
Like the Rhode Island thing in the past.
It hasn't passed yet, by the way. It's just been proposed.
No, but there will be things.
Yeah. Sadly. All right, let's move on. Let's talk next about The Last of Us Part 2. So this week it was announced, it wasn't even really announced, Neil Druckmann, who's basically the de facto spokesperson for Naughty Dog, went on Twitter, and he was in the mocap studio doing mocap for The Last of Us Part 2, and lo and behold, there was a pooch.
A mocap dog.
With a little mocap doggy with the mocap balls all over him, and it basically announcing, hey, there's going to be a companion in The Last of Us Part 2. As you guys probably know by now, The Last of Us Part 2, you play as Ellie. You do not play as the main protagonist from the first game, Joel. So it's going to be Ellie and her dog. First of all, to start, what we want to talk about is companions in games in general. Is it something that we like? Is it something that we dislike? What are the good parts of having a companion in a game? What are the bad parts of having a companion in the game? First of all, generally, do you enjoy games that have where you have a sidekick or a companion?
It's funny. I like games that have pet companions, but I hate having like regular people.
Like a human?
Yeah, like I like Dog Meat in Fallout, or I guess what was his name? Dog in Half-Life 2,
Yeah.
the robot and stuff like that. But like the girl in BioShock, like that's one of the better implementations of having a person come around with you. She never got in your way. All she could possibly do was help you out when you needed ammo and stuff. And I still just wanted her to go away.
Yeah. I think what happens is when you have humans involved, there's always going to be an escort mission.
Well,
It's just going to happen.
Well, and to me, you have that issue of like, we're not interacting like people interact because we can't.
Right. Not
But
yet,
like,
anyway.
me and this dog, like, the dog's just gonna trot around and, maybe I'll pet him or feed him or whatever. And like, that interaction is perfectly replicated inside the video game.
Yeah.
There's no shattering of belief, but every time there's like a person with you, they always get like stuck in a door or
Well, I think
they
the
do
first
whatever.
Last of Us is a good example of that. In my opinion, it kind of ruined the game because you had your companion just running out in broad daylight. Because there's like stealth in that game where you need to hide from the enemies. It's a big part of the game.
Well, I think they made it they couldn't trigger them. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, they would just
couldn't get
run
you
out.
caught, but it would look
Right.
stupid as a
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
As like hiding next to a zombie.
And your partner's running out in the middle of the zombies, and the zombies just like literally, that kind of ruined the game for me. So, with this game in particular, The Last of Us Part 2, it makes me nervous that they're going to have a companion again the way they did in the first game, because for me, it was one of the really big dings on the first Last of Us. My biggest issue with having a companion is what I just mentioned. There are always escort missions where you have to follow and protect this other character that is controlled by AI. And this goes back to what you were saying. They have not managed to replicate human behavior in a video game character yet, unless you're the one controlling it. And so inevitably, there's these awkward moments where they get caught on pieces of the geometry, their pathfinding isn't perfect, or they get caught on like an enemy. There's always something that happens.
To be fair, Naughty Dog is pretty good at that.
And your proof is? Because we were just talking about, well, I guess. But we were just
Uncharted
talking about The Last of Us, about how it was terrible there.
Right, but when did The Last of Us come out? Wasn't that like
2014? I don't even know.
It's been several years. I don't know. I have faith. Uncharted 4's people that went around with you were good enough that I'm not worried about the dog in Last of Us 2.
That's a good point, actually. You're right. But then...
In general, yes, they screw it up all the time, but Naughty Dog gets a bit of a pass from me because I think they can do it.
But here's another caveat, though. There is a difference between having a human AI character versus an animal, because there are positives to having a human AI character, because if it's a cover-based game where you take cover, it's sometimes easier to make them act more natural than an animal.
Yeah. Especially in a cover shooter, like
right.
they'll
All
just
they
get
have to do is
and
just
then
run up to cover and pop out every once in a while and fire their guns, and that's good enough. But when you have an animal running free throughout the game, there are so many chances for it to just be awkward or weird.
Or really, that dog should be shot very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Because the dog has no mode other than attack. So he'll jump on the first guy, second guy shoots dog. That's the end of the dog for you.
It absolutely does, and that shatters realism a lot in games. The pet, again, it's just like The Last of Us. The pet's running around all over the place. It's like biting people. No, they never try to kill the dog. They're just like, whatever, I got this dog biting my leg. Like, I'm just going to let him keep biting me.
That seems fine. You're like, oh, this dog has got my legs. What can I possibly do with my AK-47?
But again, the flip side of the argument as well with animals is that a lot of times they can impart a lot of emotion into a game.
Yeah.
And I'm already guessing that there's going to be a scene where the dog gets maimed or it gets caught in a trap or the dog dies. they're an easy plot device for games.
Yeah, they're emotional triggers there. It's funny. We were talking about Shadow of the Colossus, and I told Brandon Jones that I had started playing Shadow of the Colossus, and he's like, "Oh yeah, man, that ending's so sad." And I was like, Main character can't die. The only other character is that girl who the whole point is, oh my god, the horse.
Yeah!
And I'm
well, there's like no characters in the game.
It's like,
he totally ruined it.
Like, no, the horse, no! And he's like, yeah, the horse, man. And I'm sorry
totally
for anyone who hasn't played it, but...
And now you've ruined it for everybody else.
It has now been like 15 years or something. I think it's okay.
I think you get a pass on that one. But it is a very cheap plot device for video games. And I'm not a dog person per se. I grew up with dogs, and I know what the advantages and disadvantages are of having a relationship with a dog and loving dogs. But it still gets me. Like when the dog dies or is hurt, like in a lot of ways, I feel worse than when the humans get hurt.
Well, the humans were there because they wanted to be. The dog was there because he loves you. It's like, he died because you brought him here, not because he thought it was a good idea to infiltrate this base or whatever you're doing.
Right. He's just... He's your best
you
friend.
killed that dog.
Yeah.
That's why that sucks.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then why are there never cat companions? Like there is in Monster Hunter World.
I got a cat companion, and he's highly effective.
In Monster Hunter World?
Yeah.
But why are there always dogs, never cats?
Because they actually have a chance at like following it in order.
Because cats don't give a crap. They'll just run off and do their own thing. They're not going to follow you around.
Never going to attack when you tell them to.
Yeah, they're not going to follow you either. They're going to go off and like go hunt a mouse or something.
No, that's the most unbelievable thing about Monster Hunter.
Yeah. So are you excited that there's going to be a companion in The Last of Us Part 2? Does that make you want to play the game more or less?
Probably a little bit less because of the why isn't this dog been shot by the bad guys thing. Like, having any sort of permanent companion like BioShock or... I mean, we're guessing this dog is a permanent companion. Maybe it's just...
It could just be
maybe
for
they're
a
just getting
levels.
Dog animations in general. I don't know. But, like, like the dogs you get in Fallout or something, like, that dog could die.
Yeah.
It was not invincible. And so it's like, well, shit, you should have protected your dog, man. And, like, that, to me, actually added something to the game as opposed to this just invincible furry thing that runs around grabbing people's ankles and making them easier to shoot. I'd much rather something that could die, even if that means they probably will within 20 minutes, than...
Do you like having to account for another character in games? Kind of having that thing in the back of your mind where you always have to kind of think about it?
It's funny, your B-roll here is like all the worst escort missions of all time. Like, you had that GoldenEye thing. And so, like,
but it has BioShock Infinite as well, which is great.
But, like, some of the Alex Vance stuff in Half-Life 2 is really good.
It is, yeah.
Like, it has been done well. It's just normally not.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like too many bad apples have spoiled the whole barrel, I think, at this point.
So, like, in a vacuum news that there's going to be some sort of permanent companion in a game, like, that's bad news. But... it doesn't have to be. It could be a positive. Who knows?
Far Cry coming up has a dog as well.
Is it a permanent dog?
It is, absolutely. Oh, it's a huge part of the game. Yeah.
Maybe I can leave him somewhere so he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, in fact, IGN is doing a bunch of exclusive coverage of it, and I believe today's piece that they put up is all about the dog. It's literally like a 10-minute developer doc just about the dog.
Developer dog.
Yeah, developer dog, yeah. So it's going to be a big part of that game. And I start thinking back to, like, Na'vi from Ocarina of Time, and that's a very divisive sidekick. Like, a lot of people thought that Na'vi was really annoying. And
it was her voice that was annoying, though, not, like,
I loved
her
it, though.
as a character.
Listen.
You hear that enough times, you're like, okay, did you just need a selective volume, Na'vi, to just...
Do you think because that game was so popular that a lot of people associate having a sidekick with that game, and maybe that's why a lot of people are sour on the concept?
I don't know. Honestly, I would have said, like, GoldenEye and Resident Evil were more responsible for that bad image than Na'vi. Like, Navi's annoying, but she doesn't get in your way.
Yeah. She also doesn't really do much of anything.
She doesn't end missions for you by being an idiot.
Yeah, but she also doesn't really help much.
No, she can be doing a lot more.
She's basically like the Hyrulean PDA, like the Hyrulean smartphone. That's all she is.
She helps you target.
Right, yeah. Oh, you're right, yeah. And she did point out some like hidden stuff here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Navi. I don't understand the hate for Navi.
She's not the best.
Yeah. And in Resident Evil 4, my least favorite part of the game is the one scene in the castle where you have the sniper rifle and she's slowly walking along that platform and you have to like keep shooting the Ganados or whatever as they come to attack her. Like, to me, that's almost a peerless game, but that is the one part.
Except for that one part.
Yeah, except for that one part. Yeah, and that happened to be.
And it's like, it's like stealth games where if you get found out, you have to restart the mission kind of stuff. It's like, don't put in single points of failure, which your companion dying is always a single point of failure in these games. And so it's like, now I have to restart because she was an idiot and couldn't get cover or can't handle a gun or whatever,
Yeah.
If you have capable sidekicks, then sure. But
they're usually not very capable.
No, they're usually not, and especially whenever you have an escort mission. It's just the worst.
Folks in the chat, do you guys like companions in games? Just yes or no. No maybes, no sentence-long replies, just yes or no. I want to see what you guys think about this, because...
There's no way.
You think they're all going to say no?
Yeah, they hate them.
We'll see. There's a delay here. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. No,
wow.
There's one no. Oh, here we go.
I got a couple no's.
Oh, it's almost all yeses.
It's mostly yeses.
Yeah. See, sub-level, you're cheating. I said no sentences. And day is 0. I have like 3 paragraphs to say about this. All right. What's the question? So it looks like most people actually enjoy...
All right.
I'll say one thing. In games where the mechanics aren't especially complex, it can add a layer of complexity to the game that it may not have otherwise. Some people may not like that. They may want a game to be as simple and straightforward as possible, but it can add kind of a layer of depth. And then you can go further. There's some games where you actually can level up your companion and dress them in new outfits and all that kind of stuff. And I think that helps ingratiate that companion to you a lot more if you're able to personalize them and kind of make it yours in some way. And Monster Hunter World does that, right?
You can level them up. You give them their new armor and stuff, and it's all cute and cat-sized.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just keep thinking of like Ghost Recon Wildlands, where you have this team of 4 people that even if there aren't other humans there, the AI takes them, and I just want to leave them somewhere.
Yeah, I know. You stay here, bro.
Like the idea of us sinking our shots is cool, but please just stop talking and go away. Like, I will gladly take care of this all on my own.
Sink shot or not.
Yeah, just have that as an option. It's like, it might be a little bit harder, honestly, but like, just stop saying the same things whenever we drive somewhere, the same stupid quips. Like, if you play that game for 20, 30 hours, then like, you've heard
starts to wear thin
1,000 times. And like, that's one advantage of having...
I think
was about to say inanimate, but I mean like dogs and robots and stuff is that they don't talk.
Yeah, you're right.
They're barks, so to speak. Like, I don't expect them. Like,
that's a good point.
It's fine if you're just like, like I'm not expecting a unique sentence out of the guy.
It could also be a tactic to get you to play those games with other people.
It's like, this
like,
is so
Ubisoft
annoying.
Could be like, let's just annoy
friend.
the crap out of this person, so we'll actually play the game the way it's designed to be played.
Yeah.
Doubtful, but. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about, I guess what spurred on this next topic is a new racing game was announced this week called Trailblazers. And not only is it a racing game, it's a hover racing game. And hover racing games are like a dime a dozen now. Literally, it seems like there's a new one announced like every month. And so this came through. The admin was looking to curate it. I start watching. I'm like, oh, it's another F-Zero clone or... Yeah. And then I started actually paying attention to the trailer, and this game is actually something completely different. So it is a team-based hover racing game, 3-on-3. So there's 2 teams of 3 that play at the same time. Have you noticed how...
They're painting?
They're painting.
Yeah.
And so how it works is, if you are riding on the paint of your team, you get a turbo boost. And if you ride on the paint of the other team, it slows you down. And obviously, if you're riding on a blank part of the track, you just go at the normal speed.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of... It's like Splatoon
racing? Yeah.
Racing, which I'm surprised Nintendo did not...
Think of this
shouldn't this
Kart?
be the next F-Zero?
I mean, how is this not a Mario Kart mode?
Right. Or how is it not like
Yeah, just
Splatoon
Pepsi
Racing or whatever?
Yeah, just call it Splatoon Racing.
I mean, that's
fine.
really what the concept is coming from. And so I was shocked when I learned about this game because, in all honesty, driving games, racing games have been one of the most stagnant genres ever. And I've really kind of fallen out of love with racing games over the last, 10 years because they haven't changed. It's like they get prettier, but that's it. There's never any new mechanics involved. There's never any new features or modes. I mean, think about, PUBG and Battle Royale, how that has flipped shooting, third-person, first-person shooting completely on its ear.
Yeah.
It's inspired all these other clones to come out, and it's really changed first-person shooters for forever. And now I'm looking at this game, and I'm like, this could do the same exact thing for driving games. Somehow, this studio has managed to come up with an idea that, and this is a small game. This is from, Rising Star Games, generally an indie publisher, coming from a studio that I'd never even heard of before. And somehow it's managed to come up with this concept that could flip racing games completely on its head. And there's all these Microsoft and EA, all these big publishers that are just barfing out these sequels over and over with no innovation in gameplay whatsoever, and this little guy comes out and totally accomplishes it. So
Yeah, I hope it results in really interesting tactics and stuff, and it's not just, you put paint where there's not paint, and then otherwise go for your own.
Well,
I hope it's not just something you can ignore.
Well, I think what it is because it's a team-based racer that intrinsically adds strategy to it. You're going to be on the headset talking with your other teammates, trying to strategically lay down the paint on the track. And it makes sense to try to find the most challenging part of the track to lay it down on, or make sure you coat that area really well. There's going to be strategy involved, definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm really impressed with Trailblazers, and it was almost our trailer of the week, but it didn't end up becoming trailer of the week because it ended up inspiring the topic overall that we want to talk about, which is what genres are really in need of something like this, something that completely flips things on its head. So we got driving here with this game, we got shooters with PUBG. What genre do you think, Brent, really kind of needs a complete overhaul at this point?
Oh, I think RTSs need
RTSs?
hard, yeah.
Do you think that MOBAs are kind of the evolution of that, though?
Now that you say that, maybe.
But they're
see,
not.
You're really just
'Cause it's
controlling
not-
one guy. Like a
Right.
MOBA where you control a squad instead of one dude might be interesting.
That's a good idea. Let's make a game.
Will be done by the end of the day.
By
It's
the end
so
of my
easy.
life.
I mean, I don't know what the idea is, but just a basic RTS where there's two guys in a map versus each other. I don't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like that was more or less perfected a couple times, and
A long time ago.
You're just throwing different flavors on top of it, and
Just a
they
new
look
paint
cooler.
job.
You might have more or less units. Honestly, the less units I'm more interested in.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually, I don't like the macro part of those games where it's just pumping units out. I actually like the tactics of having them fight.
Right. I agree with that. The resource part of RTSs always turns me off.
So I think there's definitely stuff there, but if you go too far in that, you end up with, squad-based tactics games and stuff, which is, or you get into Final Fantasy Tactics or something, which are both fun, but then you're not an RTS anymore. So I don't really know what you do, but maybe it's just because the definition of an RTS is so narrow that of course it's going to stagnate because anything else is called a different kind of game.
Something else. Look, think
I
about a
don't
game
know.
maybe like Pikmin. I mean, it kind of handles RTS in a
Pikmin was
different way.
interesting, yeah.
If you really kind of expanded on multiplayer options for a Pikmin game, that's why Pikmin 4 is taking forever to come out.
Yeah.
Maybe Nintendo's trying to find a way to kind of innovate in that way and in that genre.
And there have been a handful of games where you could jump down into the battlefield and do stuff. The name escapes me, but it was 20 years ago. It was Sacrifice or something.
I don't know.
Is that ringing any bells? Well, anyway, you could come down and actually help out in those battles. You're not doing any.
Could take control of one character on the battlefield
yeah.
or one unit or whatever.
But then they would become more powerful, and you would do stuff, and then you could pull back out when you needed to do your management and stuff. And there have been interesting things, but I just haven't seen anything in several years.
Yeah. If there's one genre that I feel needs a complete and utter overhaul, it's the 3D platformer. And this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge fan of that genre, have been for a really long time. But I think this year in particular has really shown me that it hasn't changed in a really long time. Obviously, Super Mario Odyssey is sublime. And in a lot of ways, when Nintendo makes a 3D platformer, I just kind of give it a pass in a lot of ways because it generally does everything else so well. But we saw with, like, Ukulele...
But it's not revolutionary.
It's not, by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, it's amazing, but it's the same game you've played. It's just the perfect version of that.
It is, absolutely. And I would argue that even games like Super Mario Galaxy were more innovative than Odyssey as far as how the game design is set up.
At least the perspective changes and stuff.
Right, and just the way the general game design is handled. These games have remained the same for forever. It's hey, here's this discrete level... Here's X number of things you need to collect. Here's X number of activities you have to complete before you 100% the level. And then you get X number of stars or moons or whatever you want to call it, jiggies. And then the next level unlocks, and you can go on to the next one.
To be fair, the big thing about this one that I think changed at least the Mario games is that the moons are fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
Is that, like, you're like, hey, I wonder if I could get up to that platform. You can, and there's a moon there. Like, it always had some sort of benefit to exploring and trying to do the little things, which in the other Mario games, you might get like a 1-up or some coins. But like now, it's always worth doing because the stars or whatever, there's not 5 per level, there's like 50. So it's like there's
Matt
always
and I
a
have had long discussions on this, and he hates that about Super Mario Odyssey.
Really?
He said that he feels that it cheapens the sense of accomplishment you get when you do get a moon because they're just everywhere. And my argument, and I'm on your side, I love that about Odyssey. And my counter argument to him was, how far did you play? Because, the first couple worlds, that is how it is.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, you walked far, and here's the moon. Yeah, but like later on, like,
they don't just hand them to you anymore. And then my other point of contention with his argument is that they use those moons to get you to a place that gives you a new perspective or view so that you can see other moons.
Yeah.
Because sometimes a moon's hiding behind a tree or behind a rock, and they'll put a moon somewhere else so that when you get that moon that may be easy to get, you see that other moon that may not be quite as easy to get.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that made a big difference in this game. But it's still
it's not like genre changing or anything.
It's not.
But it made a big difference to me about actually playing through the entire game.
Yeah.
And like exploring all the nooks and crannies.
Right. Because to me, the thing about 3D platformers that I love so much and that makes them really great and I think makes them appeal to a wide audience is that you do so many different things in them. Yeah. You're not just running and jumping and bouncing. You're racing. There's fighting games. There's puzzles.
I mean, the Jak and Daxter series is one of my old favorites. And there was a lot of like shooting and stuff in those. And then, I guess one of them was a straight up racing game. But those were varied a lot. But still, they're kind of the same stuff. And I think they're one of the more out there versions of it.
Yep. And look, I don't want to present a problem with something without trying to provide a solution. Why isn't there an open world 3D platformer? Because if you think about what 3D platformers are already, they let you do anything. There's like 50 different gameplay styles in them. Why can't you create this open world that just is essentially a toy box that allows you to do all that stuff whenever you want to?
I don't know if I said it on GameFace or not, but when the original stuff for Odyssey was coming out, I swore up and down that New Donk City was like the hub world, and that there were like portals from there to all the other places, and like you could just... That's what it's going to be. You can just go do whatever and go to these places, and then you need a certain amount of moons. And like it turned out to be way more guided than that. But I was
it's really
I really thought that's what they were going to do.
I mean, really, this game, the levels are bigger than most Mario games, most 3D Mario games have been. Yeah. But it's still just, hey, here's this discrete level with X number of stuff that you need to collect before it opens the next one, and then there's just this facade of an interface on the ship. It's basically a loading screen, a glorified loading screen.
It is easily like the least open of the Mario games, I would have
said. Absolutely. Yeah. And so to me, in this genre, when you start looking at games like Yooka-Laylee, which literally could have been made back in 1998, I mean, the design of that game is absolutely ancient. I mean, when A Hat in Time ends up being one of the better 3D platformers from the year where you have Rare making a 3D platformer for the first time in like 20 years, that shows you that the genre has been stagnant. And a lot of people wonder why 3D platformers have died. That is why they've died, because they have not evolved like all the other genres have. So for me, if there's one genre that could really use a refresher, and I am disappointed that the new Mario wasn't more innovative in that way. Great game, undoubtedly a great game, my second favorite game of last year, but it could have been more. And Nintendo already showed with Zelda that it could have done something different with this franchise. I mean, it really played it safe with this game in a lot of ways compared to what it did with Zelda, where it went to the open world. And maybe the next one, because obviously Nintendo has experience.
Yeah, that might have been hedging their bets. Who knows?
I mean, look, the game had been started well before the Switch was released, as was Zelda. Remember,
Right.
Zelda suddenly was delayed out of nowhere. So who knows how much of the open world stuff was prevalent before they delayed it and decided to rework parts of it. I don't know. But the bottom line is Nintendo now has a lot of experience working with open worlds. And in all honesty, counting on another developer or publisher to innovate the 3D platformer is probably asking for too much. So I feel like Nintendo is the last hope for that to happen. And hopefully with the next 3D Mario, that I'm guessing will probably come along in 2 or 3 years, we'll kind of look at the base design of that series and maybe change things up a little bit. There's no reason why the games need to be designed that way. There's absolutely none. Just take the Zelda engine, start building Mario with the Zelda engine, and off you go. So
I think you were being optimistic, but that's okay.
you're right. Because here's the thing.
I don't think that's going to happen.
If it does come out in 2 or 3 years, there's no way in hell it's going to be an open world game.
No.
It will be just them snapping new levels together. Or maybe they just end up supporting Odyssey with DLC. That Luigi DLC came out this week or whatever. So
Yeah.
maybe they just keep supporting it with DLC. I mean, they could add a completely new world onto Super Mario Odyssey with DLC if they
Pretty
wanted
easily.
to. Very easily. So all you have to do is just take the ship screen and just use that as a load hide and just load it in the next level and be like, here you are!
Yeah, here's more.
Yeah, and I'd totally be fine with that, by
Yeah.
the way. I would have no issues with that. It's a great game, and I'm more than happy to get more of it. So there you go. RTS for you, 3D platformer for me. What do you guys think need to be changed? Maybe you can give us that at the end of the show when we ask for questions. Next up, we're going to talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance, because one, I want to make fun of myself a little bit. So
I'm always down for that.
yeah, I know. I'll be self-deprecating for a little bit here. So last week, Matt and I did a recurring segment we do on the show called High Low. Have you ever watched that?
Yeah, we did that one time.
Yeah, we did it, actually. Yeah, so we did it last week, and I gave him a question.
I'm pretty sure I won.
You probably did. Yeah. Well, it's not competitive.
We were making,
That's not how it works, though.
I know. We were just talking about like things that wouldn't happen for like 5 years. We're not going to know if I won for a very long time.
But it's not like when we do it, it's not me against you. It's
I know.
I present something, and you tell me whether you think the number is going to be higher or lower.
Yeah.
And so last week, one of the questions was, Kingdom Come Deliverance has sold 500,000 copies already. It has a really low aggregate review score. And it's loaded with bugs, and there's tons of videos all over YouTube of all the bugs in the game and everything. And basically the question was, by the end of the year, how many units do you think it will have sold? And it had sold 500,000 in like a couple weeks. But then the question was, how much do you think the review scores and all the bugs are going to affect it? Do you think it's going to continue to sell the way it has? And the number was 1 million by the end of the year. So only
It'll be above that.
Well, that's what Matt said. Yeah.
Is it already?
Yesterday, they announced it sold 1 million.
Oh, okay.
So I was way off on that. And so once I saw that it sold 1 million, like literally like a week later, I was like, whoa, wow, I definitely got that wrong. But it brought up a question. It's like, what does it take if you really, really like a genre, or you really, really like a concept? What does it take for you to say, no, I'm not buying that game? Because obviously, there's 1 million people out there who read the reviews, looked at the aggregate score, saw that the game's loaded with, in some cases, game-breaking bugs, and everyone who's experienced one of those before, they are one of the most soul-crushing things that can ever happen to you in a video game, is when like you lose a save, or you get stuck somewhere and you can't get out. They're the worst bugs in games, and this game has those. So, for you, what would it take if you, say, the next Elder Scrolls comes out, and people are like, oh my gosh, Bethesda blew it. It's averaging like a 5 Metacritic, and just like a lot of Bethesda's Elder Scrolls games, it's just riddled with bugs, and like you can't get past like the 8-hour mark. What would it take for you to be like, I'm not buying Elder Scrolls 6, for example?
To me,
what's the breaking point?
Bugs aren't gonna stop me, because I have faith that most of these guys are going to fix them in the next couple months. Like Kingdom Come, like I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to get it once I hear that the patch has been released.
It's like the one that makes the big difference.
It's like The Witcher. You don't buy it the first day, although Witcher 3 released fine. But like when The Witcher 2 came out, nobody was expecting it to be bug free, and we were right. And so I waited and got it when it was.
Yeah.
to me, the way to get me to not buy a game is to make it boring or make it the same old shit. Like, this is doing new stuff. You're just some random dude. You're not special, and like that's very exciting. Like I'm much more excited about that than I am the next Elder Scrolls because I've played several Elder Scrolls games, and they're all kind of the same idea. Like
played 5 of them.
You really yeah. You really want to like flip that on its head? Please do. I'll definitely buy it.
But you would buy it regardless.
Probably, but if it's boring and it's bug ridden, then it's kind of like, well, sorry.
How do you define boring for a game like
just
that?
the same old stuff. Like as I have gotten older, like if I have played this kind of game before, like I'm sorry, I don't want to play it anymore. Like if it's not like I have enough guilty pleasure stuff like Battlegrounds or Warcraft or whatever, like I don't need another one. So you better be doing something new and give me a new experience. Like that's kind of my main thing, at least now.
To me, broken games are absolutely
that's
the
funny.
breaking
Like
point
that
for
doesn't
me.
even bother me.
If the game is broken and there's a chance that I'm going to spend, even if there's just a chance, if it turns into a thing, quote unquote, online, that this game is broken and you make it to a point where all your progress gets wiped away, I will not play that game. I absolutely will not. And that's why I've been shocked that this game has continued, not just to sell, but to sell like gangbusters. And I do get part of it is, and maybe this is a big part that we should bring up, is that it's really dry right now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that is
they released it a good time.
That is an important element of this. There's no big epic game like this. I mean, you could argue Monster Hunter World is, but that's more of
kind of a different audience.
It is, and it's also more of kind of an instanced game, where you have like these little mini sessions where you jump online and you go hunting with like your friends, and then you finish the hunt and you go back and get your spoils, and maybe you stop there. This is just kind of one of those games that just goes on and on and on, and you're kind of all on your own and playing it by yourself. But so maybe launch window has something to do with supply and demand of quality.
Yeah.
Because do you think this game would sell as well if it were released in November?
No, I mean that's why I think November. The idea of everyone releasing their games in November is so stupid.
It is.
It's like, look at this. This like if this was versus the next Elder Scrolls, it would get clobbered.
It would, yeah, absolutely. Well, who knows? The next Elder Scrolls may be even buggier than this game. But to me, if you ignore supply and demand, when it was released, what else is available at that time, for me, it's a game-breaking bug. And maybe part of it is that I can't afford in my life to spend 20 hours playing something.
You can't replay those 4
with
hours.
the risk that it may crash and I have to play those 20 hours over again. I can't do that. So maybe my vocation is tying into it a little bit and is affecting what would keep me from buying a game. But in all honesty, you know, when Matt was talking about this game, he actually delivered like early impressions of this like a week before it came out. And he's talking about it. I'm like, oh, I said on the show, oh, I'm going to play this. Mm-hmm. Like I just said flat out. And I'm like, and we'll talk about it on next week's show. Last week was next week's show, and we did not talk about the game because Matt had played the first 5 hours of it when he talked about it on GameFace, and then the Tuesday came and the reviews came out. And then the whole week I'm getting flooded with stuff in our admin of kooky Kingdom Come bugs, the craziest bugs in Kingdom Come Deliverance, game-breaking and I was just like, oh, screw that. Like, there's no way I'm going to play this game because I just can't, and maybe it's not just me. Maybe there's a lot of people out there who are really busy. They're like you. They have a crazy job, and they have 2 kids that they're raising. But you would do it. You're going to buy it. But you said you're going to wait.
I'm going to wait for the patch. I mean, I don't want to deal with the bugs if I don't have to. I'm just saying they don't scare me as much as you, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I am more excited about that than most other games coming. Like, I'm sure Far Cry 5 is going to be cool, but it just looks like another Far Cry game.
Yeah,
like,
it does.
If we're honest about it. And I'm sure that's fun, but like this is something that like, I don't know, it's kind of what I always wanted Elder Scrolls to be, is a little bit more grounded.
Yeah.
Almost a little bit more technical, like the Gran Turismo versus Burnout.
Yeah,
like, I want to play
analogy.
the Gran Turismo version here. Yeah. That might be pretty fun.
So what happens, though, if you keep waiting and waiting for this patch to get the it's okay, come on in sort of message or whatever,
yeah,
and it doesn't come for another 2 months, and then suddenly we start getting into the meat of the game
summer
release
games
schedule.
or something, then they might miss out. that is my intention now, but they may miss that window.
So you're saying that so bugs are a big deterrent for you.
Yeah, I guess that is the exact opposite of what I said, but that is how I act, yes.
So I guess we're actually kind of in agreement on that, except you think that eventually I can't, because...
I'm assuming this is a Witcher sort of situation that's going to get settled out pretty quickly. But
so we actually kind of agree on this. Like, you just are able to wait and play it later, where I can't, because when they finally fix this game, it's going to be probably a month from now, and that's when things start picking up, and like... It's going to be hard for me to spend 60 hours on this game when nobody cares anymore, because that's the other angle for me is like...
You're trying to monetize your gameplay time.
Essentially, I am. Like, I need to make sure that what I'm playing is something that I can parlay into content that our users want to watch. And in 2 months, is anyone going to care what I think about this game? Like, at the end of the... You will.
I want to know.
But look, at the end of the year, when we do our Game of the Year stuff, it will be brought back up, and I will eventually have to play at least a little bit of this. But December is good for that. Like, things start cooling off, and I'm able to kind of go back and play some stuff. Like I did that with Horizon Zero Dawn this last year. And maybe this will be my Horizon Zero Dawn of 2018, where I go back in December, and it's all fixed up and patched nice, and there's DLC out for it, and I get to kind of play the whole experience to kind of... And then measure it against all the other games that have come out that year, too, instead of having sort of that early year bias that sometimes happens with games that come out early. So, but for me, it's a deal breaker. Like, I can't burn 20 hours playing this game and for it to all be for nothing and my save to get corrupted. And chances are, by the time it is patched in a month and a half, it'll be irrelevant, and I won't be able to cordon away time to play it then either. So I'm kind of in a lose-lose situation with this game, if you will, right now. And that is, I don't complain about my job like ever. But that is one caveat about it that I hate, is like, I need to play the stuff when it's hot. Yeah. I got to strike while the iron's hot. I can't wait and be like, oh, this is buggy. I'll wait till I can't do that. So I get put in this awkward position of either it's good when it comes out or I don't play it.
Yeah.
Until the end of the year if I have the time to do it. So, and I do really regret that, because right now it is so slow. I am playing so many crappy indie games right now, just trying to find like something that is worthy of bringing forth on GameFace or to the sifters, essentially. It's like, I just keep getting like email after email. Hey, we got this indie game. You want a code? Yep, give me the code. I boot it up. I play it for like an hour, and I'm like, oh, God. Like, it's so bad. I actually talked about that on our new show this week a little bit, about indie games, about how I've been playing so many, and they're so awful. And I'm just kind of souring on indie games in general, and I'm just sick of the flood of just mediocrity that's kind of permeating that space right now.
Yeah, it's never been easier to make a game.
It hasn't, and you can see it.
Except that it's still hard to make a game, and people don't get that part.
Yeah, because what they think is, oh, it's just about what it looks like in our concept. Yeah. No, really, what makes a great game is being able to motivate the player to keep playing it.
Yeah.
That minute to minute, like
making a game fun is easily the hardest part.
I mean, Bungie had it right. It took its game, and it's like, how do we just make a bunch of really compelling 15-minute chunks? And once we have all those, we'll snap them together, and then we'll write the narrative around that so that it all kind of makes sense, and it's just going to keep people playing. And you're absolutely right. That is what indie developers just totally get wrong. They're like, it's a pretty game, and the concept I can write out in a paragraph for you, and you're going to like it. And it's like, but then you sit down to play it, and there's nothing there that keeps you going. Like, the concept may get you to start it, and that's what I do. So I get all these emails in my inbox from all these indie PR firms and publishers and developers like, hey, please play our game. We need exposure or whatever. I watch the trailer, and I read their synopsis in their email. And that will get me to try the game. But literally 9 times out of 10, after like 40 minutes, I'm like, oh, screw this. Like, this isn't worth it. And no one's going to care.
I feel like a lot of indie games also want to say something with their game.
I wouldn't say a lot.
Well, but I think it's a dangerous pitfall to get into, because it's a laudable goal, except that now you've thrown another design constraint on yourself when you're already constrained by the amount of things you can do, the amount of characters you can put in the game and like animate and stuff like that. And now you got this other thing where it's like, well, it's all going to build towards us realizing that, video games are good for kids,
right?
Or whatever.
That's the game that needs to be made.
But then you do that and it's not fun. So like it makes it a lot harder to make something that's good, I think.
Yeah, I guess. I think it's easy to make a competent video game in 2018. To make a video game that's worth paying for in 2018, not so much, because all the boats are rising. Every game looks pretty good now. Every game is relatively bug-free
Or people don't care if it's 16-bit. It's like, fine, whatever. That doesn't make me not want to play your game.
Right, absolutely.
Like, that used to matter. It'd be like, oh, that's like baby's game or some shit. But, like...
Some people are drawn to games like that, though. They like that retro aesthetic.
I mean, I like when games look nice, but I don't care if they don't, unless it's, like, offensively bad, you know?
But then sometimes that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Just ask Jim Sterling. He makes a living off of those games, essentially, making fun of them or having fun with them. So, I think ultimately to kind of sum up the topic, like for me, the tipping point is a game-breaking bug. I will not buy a game with game-breaking bugs in it. Anything that has a chance of screwing with my save, that's it. That's where I draw the line. If there's any chance of my saves getting corrupted, wiped out, no way. I'm not...
You know they have tools to, like, auto backup saves and stuff?
On consoles?
Oh, no. On PC.
Yeah. Do you play consoles at all anymore?
I mean, I play Monster Hunter.
Okay. What's on PC? So you decided...
Well, okay, so actually, I had not played any console games for a very long time, but then I just recently got a 4K TV, and so then I was like, that's right. I have a PS4 Pro. So like now I'm playing back. I put Monster Hunter in and Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, these look
just to check out your TV.
Look great.
I mean, honestly, I don't think Monster Hunter is out on PC yet. It's coming later.
No, it's not.
It's only on consoles right now. So I'm going to make sure I clear that up. But that's the breaking point for me. Any risk of my save getting messed with, I'm out. I'm not, or getting caught. Like I think it was with the Skyward Sword, where you could get caught in that room and couldn't get out.
I didn't get far enough for that. I'm not sure, man.
I think it was. I think there was a room in Skyward Sword where if you went in and had some kind of parameters attached to your character, either you were carrying something or something, you would get stuck in that room and could never get out. And there was no way to like fix your save or anything. Like you were just stuck in that room for forever.
So my wife got really into Stardew Valley on the Switch, and so like she got really far in it, and then she got into the situation where like, so in Stardew Valley you play the entire day and then it saves when you go to sleep at the end. So like there's no midday saving or anything, and she kept having this issue where at the end of the day the save would like corrupt and the game would crash.
Oh jeez.
And so like for a while she just like Groundhog Day that day.
Really? She must have really liked it.
She really liked it, and then
but she wasn't making any progress.
Well, eventually we found out what the issue was. The developer talked about it, and like it was if you got one of your tools repaired, it had an empty square and it did this thing, and like so we were able to fix it, and she could get past it, but it was just like
she must really love the game. She perfected that day.
Yeah, that day was extremely efficient.
Maximized her time on that day.
She got it.
I have not played Stardew Valley, actually. Do you spend any time with it? I know people love it.
I played like 5 or 10 hours of it. Like I didn't get as into it as she did, but I really I think it is probably the best of those kind of games. Like it has a lot of different goals for you to go towards, and like for some reason I really like fishing in video games, and their fishing implementation was fun. So like that's how I made money, was fishing, and then I forgot I had crops and all this other stuff and let everything go by and just did fishing. And so like once I was kind of felt like I'd done all the fishing, because there's this sort of a collection mechanic, so I got all the fish I wanted to get. Then I just let my wife play, and then she was like, "Oh, it's a fishing contest. I need you." So I would come in and like I would do all the fishing for her.
You were her ringer.
Yeah. Hey, I won big time.
Yeah, I'm curious why Stardew Valley has done so much better than Harvest Moon. I mean, Harvest Moon's kind of fallen off the map. There is a new one coming out pretty soon, but it's kind of taken over that genre, and that's really another genre that's just kind of been dying on the vine without any innovation. What is it about Stardew Valley that kind of sets it apart from all the stuff that came before?
I don't know. I mean, I think it did well because of Harvest Moon.
Really?
My wife was a big fan of Harvest Moon, and then this one came out, and like it's a really good version of that. And what else are you going to play if you like that?
Yeah.
Like, when was the last Sims game? It's like if this is kind of the stuff you like doing, is like managing low stakes stuff, like and like this is going to come up several times for me, but like when you're a parent, you spend all your day like on, and so when you're done with the day after the kids go to bed and you have time to play for a video game, you were looking for low stakes, like, I don't want to think about how I would handle my family in an apocalypse. I want to grow some turnips and sell them for some cash, and then buy some new curtains or whatever. Like
it's the married version of Netflix and chill,
right? It's like, you know what, like, we watched. When we watched Breaking Bad, almost all of it was out, and then we had a kid over the divide of one of the seasons. And, like, after that, like, we weren't sleeping, and, like, it's stressful and stuff, and they were like, Jesus Christ, can we really watch Breaking Bad tonight? And so, like 3 episodes from the end is, like a pretty serious cliffhanger, and, like, we stayed on that for months.
Wow.
Until we were like, we just need to pull the Band-Aid, let's just do this.
Yeah. And worth the time.
So, like, there's definitely a certain type of person where this is the perfect game. It's low stakes, and, like, there's easy goals to reach, there's no pressure. And, like, I just wish it was on my phone. Yeah. I wish there was the equivalent of that on my phone.
It could be. It's not pushing the hardware.
There's no reason not to. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you came on, because that game has been pretty big, and neither Matt nor I have played it, so I'm glad you came on to kind of fill everybody in on what a big deal it is, why it's a big deal.
I mean, if this sounds like something you would enjoy, it is, I think, the best version of that.
Also,
so check it out.
You can take it on the go. It's portable.
Yeah.
So, which is a big difference for Switch. It's a good portable game.
They're also releasing multiplayer on the PC very soon. I mean, it'll come to the consoles and stuff later, but, like, you and a friend could have a farm together. And that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
So.
As long as your friend's holding up his end of the bargain. That's the thing about co-op.
I think it's like it is one of you's farm, and the other guy's just visiting.
He's just a farm hand.
Yeah.
You can just tell him what to do, basically.
I mean, I don't know the full extent of it, but
you'd be like, go handle the crops while I fish.
Let me tell you that if Stardew Valley did that on the Switch right now, we would own 2 Switches.
Wow.
That's how that would have happened.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
And I would have just been fishing.
I wonder why Nintendo should probably just start selling, like, the Switch handheld separately.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of having to buy all the other crap, it's like lower the price $125 or whatever and just sell the handheld with 2 Joy-Cons.
The replacement's like $80 or $90. It's like, skim that off the top. I'll buy one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I won't anymore, but there was a time where I definitely would have done that when I wanted to play games on the Switch and my wife was playing Stardew Valley. She's since moved on, but, like, that was her Switch
You're
for
hogging
2 months
up my
or whatever,
Switch. That's tough when you got Mario out there as well. So,
yeah.
All right, let's move along. We're going to talk next about, this is actually a topic that I tried to bring up yesterday. So yesterday was one of the most disheartening days I've ever had streaming. So we did the first episode of today's High Score, which is a call-in show where people call in and we discuss games. It's trying to get the community involved in content as much as I can. First episode went great. We had more calls than we could handle. Like, literally, I'd start talking to somebody and 5 more people were calling. And then I went in yesterday to try to do it again and had spent like 5 hours preparing B-roll for the show, all the graphics, drove here at like 4 o'clock. It took me like an hour to get here, and nobody called. No one.
Should have texted me. I would have called you.
I started the first topic, and I just sat there, and I was like, yeah, if nobody calls, this show is worthless. And all the work I did was worthless.
You're like, hello,
I start talking to myself.
This is Susan. I'm calling in to talk about how cool you are.
Yeah, so I just ended the stream after like 30 minutes or whatever. I was like, man, I did all that work for nothing. But not for nothing, because I am going to bring back a topic from that was supposed to be in that show for here. And so this week, Kotaku's podcast Split Screen, I don't know if you listened to it at all. Great podcast. Jason Schreier, who is, in my opinion, one of the best journalists in the industry right now. He breaks tons of stories. He actually does like investigative stuff. He's on the podcast, and he had mentioned how he just got like a brand new kick-ass rig for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And he has had a PC since January 1st. And what he's discovered is that since he's had this beastly PC, he doesn't play console games anymore because he cannot go back to playing games at less than 60 frames per second. Have you found that you have problems going back and playing games that aren't pegged at 60 or higher?
No, I mean, like, being 60 frames a second is definitely a huge plus for me. Like, some people can't even perceive those frame rates, but I definitely can, and I definitely like seeing it at 60. But, like, I don't know, man. Sitting in, like, the way we have a TV set up so that, like, I can sit in bed and play on the controller and, like, That's sweet.
Yeah. It definitely makes a difference. So this brought up the discussion that we're going to have, the discussion point that we're going to address is, what is more important to you? Is it more important to have a game that looks as beautiful as possible, like the game we're looking at right now, which is Uncharted 4, and have that run at a solid 30 frames per second? Or is it more important to you to have a game that may not look quite as good, but runs at 60 frames per second? Because that's the balance that you're striking. I mean, if you go back and you think about, like, probably the clearest example of this is the N64 era, where developers really had to make that decision. They had to say, hey, we can put...
Yeah, like Perfect Dark.
Right, we can put,
10 frames a second.
Right, we can put, like, 10 million, or like 1 million polygons on screen at once, and it'll run at 10 frames per second, or we can put 350,000 on the screen at once, and it'll run at least 30.
Yeah.
And... I mean, developers are still making those decisions today. It was just more blatantly obvious back then, because when the frame rate went down, it didn't go down to like 20 frames per second. It went to like 8. Like Perfect Dark, literally.
Perfect Dark was unplayable.
It's at times it was unplayable. And I mean, with the whole expansion pack on the N64, it didn't really help anything. So that brings up the question. And what's more important to you, fidelity or fluidity?
So I actually recently had the opportunity to make this decision with all the information available to me, and I was surprised by my answer.
Okay.
So I said I just got this 4K HDR TV, and so like I boot up, Horizon Zero Dawn, which they have a favor resolution mode or a favor performance mode, and I would have sworn a million years that I prefer performance. I don't. I prefer resolution. It looked better. And I was super surprised, but that's where I stand, apparently.
Brent, I'm right there with you, man. To me, the overall, provided it stays at least
it's got to
30-ish.
Like if you go below 30, then like no, that's a serious issue. But
I mean, even that depends.
I think 4K 30 versus whatever checkerboard less than that is at 60, like it just doesn't look as good.
Well, then you start talking about the beginning process. Again, wow, this game is so gorgeous, dude. It almost looks like a painting at times. Then you start talking about the core process of creating a game. And when you start speccing out your game, Naughty Dog, when it starts speccing out a game, it says, hey, we're going to target 30 frames a second.
Sorry, I just realized that I can play Uncharted 4 on my 4K TV, and I never really finished it, so now I'm super excited.
By the way, what you're looking at right now is 720p.
I know.
That's not even 1080p what you're looking at.
It's going to be so
It's
good.
ridiculous how good this game looks. And that's my point. It's like I would rather play Naughty Dog's games running at 30 frames per second than play some other game that looks worse and runs at 60. Now, there are some exceptions. First-person shooters, I prefer the frames. Maybe because mostly there hasn't been a really gobsmacking first-person shooter, save for maybe Battlefront. There used to be. Back when Guerrilla was making first-person shooters.
1 looks amazing.
If you run it on PC, it's like mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but PC kind of stays out of this discussion.
Yeah, that's not really fair, because you can have your cake and eat it too.
Right, but we're talking more with consoles here, where you have a fixed platform, where this is what we got. We need to decide whether we want more of one or more of the other to get out of this hardware. And I would rather play a game that looks like Naughty Dog's games, that is just the best-looking game on the market, and sacrifice those 30 frames, because to your point of what you were talking about earlier, some people can't even perceive the 30 to 60.
Right.
I can. Clear as day, I can. And if people couldn't, then it wouldn't be a thing. I mean, there's a reason that YouTube went through all this trouble to allow people to post 60 frames per second videos on YouTube. There's a lot of people can perceive the difference, and I am one of them. But
well, I don't even think it's that rare, but I remember I had like a really long discussion / fight with my best friend over this, because he thought that seeing over 30 frames a second was a myth, and I'm like, it's not a myth. And so we eventually
was this
found
Ryan you were talking to?
Yeah, we eventually found this website that had 60, 45, 30, 15, I think it was GIFs doing it, and he was like, see, they're the same. I'm like, you don't see it.
He couldn't see it. He couldn't see it.
And it's like, to him, it is a myth. I was like,
That's
all
hilarious.
right, so we were both right. I'm super surprised right now.
Well, what a lot of people like him tend to go back on is the medical information that the human eye can only see. I think it's 28 frames per second. That's this thing that's floated around for forever.
Yeah. That's not true.
It's not true. I can absolutely tell the difference, but I can also absolutely tell you that I would prefer to play a game that looks like this versus something that doesn't look as good as that but runs more quickly.
Yeah.
I think one example. Now, look, there is cases of happy mediums. So I think if there's one game from the last few years that to me that strikes a perfect medium, it's Doom. Doom still looks great. Mm-hmm. But it also is just like mind-searingly fast.
Yeah, it's such a fast game.
And
It'd be tough to play it.
And that is also the genre where it makes sense. It's because it is a circle strafe twitch shooter. And in games like that, there's a big difference between playing it at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. So this is a case where they're starting the game and they spec it out and they're like, look, this is Doom. Like, this thing needs to run like grease lightning. And I would be shocked if Ryan played this, Doom, and could not tell the difference. Because as soon as you pick up that controller and you start moving around, like, you can just tell it's just like lightning. You touch the stick and it's just like, it's like playing a PC game.
Yeah.
And so I would be shocked if even people like him who can't technically perceive that 60 frames per second wouldn't at least feel the difference in playing the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that might also be that it's tuned to that level of stuff, and like, who knows? They might just be pulling the controller more and stuff like that. Like,
that's true.
It might be higher fidelity in more ways than one.
That's true. But I mean, I feel like Doom is still a good-looking game. It's not you look at it and you're like, oh, they sacrificed something for 60. You only feel that way when you compare it to a Naughty Dog game.
Well, I mean, okay, so when you have a mid-range PC and you play which of these things can I turn down to get frames back out of it? Like, one of the big ones is
VSync.
VSync, and then there's like shadow quality. Yeah. And when you get really down to it, like, over a certain level, like, you will never notice shadow quality going up. Like, it's just not what you look at. Like, it being there is very good to a certain extent where the shadow matches whatever the object is, but it being like absolutely perfectly dithered and stuff, like,
I think it depends on the game. Because if it's like a walking simulator or something that's kind of slow, where you're just kind of walking around investigating stuff, you'll definitely notice the stair-stepping on the shadows, like as like there's a leaf, and you'll see like the jagged edges of the like it does. I do notice that stuff.
But I don't think you're going
to. If it's a game like Doom,
you're not going to notice it. Doom is my point.
Nope.
I think you can. I think they could. Skimp is the wrong word, but they could lower some of those settings without it being a huge deal.
Yeah, and that's the thing about consoles. You don't have that freedom to pick and choose what you enable or disable. Although that's starting to change a little bit. That they're starting to treat console gamers like they're smart enough.
Especially now with this like kind of fluid console generation where you might have a PS4 Pro, you might have a regular PS4, you might have an Xbox One X. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, and they have to start scaling games or providing options you can turn on or off. Like you said, Horizon Zero Dawn gives you the option, just like a PC game, to kind of pick and choose. It's never as extensive as you get in PC, though.
No, but I've always thought that's overblown. Like, I am a programmer. I'm very technically minded. I have made graphics engines before, and there's too many options.
Yeah.
It's like, break it down into the things like, just give one slider for shadows.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need, like, all the different, like, things that I have to look up what the words mean.
Yeah. Like, occlusion, blah, blah,
and like,
blah.
They'll never do that because some people actually know what they mean, and they have their favorite thing. But, like, I wish there was some sort of, like, I'm not an idiot, but I'm not a genius. Give me those options.
Well, what I've noticed lately is I've been, again, because I'm just trying to play anything to find stuff to talk about, I've been getting into a lot of betas on PC. I've actually been playing my PC a lot this year as well, just like Jason Schreier. And what I've noticed, a lot of the betas, they don't really give you the option. Like, they basically detect your hardware. They're like, you got this much RAM, you got this video card, this is how it's going to run. Hunt Showdown was like that. Like, you couldn't adjust anything. And actually, like Pascure, a lot of the betas I've been playing on PC, none of them let you really touch the graphic settings. I don't know if the final versions ultimately will. Probably. I'm guessing they will. Because don't you think PC players will cry foul?
You can't not do it on a PC.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the final versions maybe will, but it seems like a lot of the betas on PC lately have just been like, set it and forget it, and off you go. So
I think that's something you do towards the end because you need to know where your limits are about, like, during development, you don't know how far your shadows are even going to go
you're right.
and stuff like that. So you don't want to put an upper bound that doesn't make any sense and stuff like that. So they just wait.
So ultimately on this topic, are we in agreement that fidelity...
Surprisingly, if you'd asked me like a couple weeks ago before I got the TV, I would have been like, oh, performance, definitely. But no, I was wrong. It is definitely... resolution is what I care about, apparently.
What TV did you get, just out of curiosity?
I got the Sony 4K HDR guy.
Nice. It's a good TV.
It's actually funny. A couple of years ago, I bought 0.1 of a Bitcoin and then promptly lost my password to Coinbase. And so, like, I guess a month or two ago, like,
when it was at 20,000,
it was really going high. I'm like, you know what? I should probably recover my my password there. And then
how much was that 0.1 worth?
Okay, so the 0.1 was worth maybe like $2,000, but I had forgotten that.
Wow, how much did you buy for? Like $20 or something?
I think it was like a couple hundred when I did it.
Yeah.
But like the real thing was I had forgotten completely that I'd also bought a couple Ethereum, which went up by like 1,000%.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck this, and pulled out the exact amount to buy a new 4K TV, and was like, hooray, this is free.
Awesome.
And then the values all tanked, and I was like, sweet, glad I did that.
Perfect. Did you? Was it easy for you to sell the coins? Because that's the one thing I've heard about Bitcoin is like, well, you're on an exchange. So
I would never do that outside of an exchange.
Yeah.
And I'm not. There's all kinds of other coins you can get into and stuff like that. But
that's a whole other podcast.
If I am just kind of doing the casual, like, hey, it's going up, I'm gonna buy some, and oh, hey, it's tanking, I'm gonna sell it, then Coinbase is fine. Just do that.
Gotcha. So we agree on that one.
Yeah.
I'm all about fidelity over fluidity. I'll take it any day of the week. Just give me more games from Naughty Dog that look like Naughty Dog's games, and I'll be cool. So, all right, we're going to talk next about a remaster. Remasters are all the rage now. Typically, remasters are for games that need remastered, that are from generations ago, that you look at them now, you're like, eee. Or unless they're retro styled, now that's a thing. But polygonal games, generally, remasters only happen for games that are from...
at least a generation.
At least. It's at least like the PS2, Xbox, GameCube generation. Things are starting to change, though. It was announced this week that Burnout Paradise is being remastered. Do you think it's #too soon?
Sorry, is this the remaster or is this the original?
This is the original.
Okay, yeah, it's too soon.
Yeah. That's the original. We have a trailer for the remaster. Yeah, here's the remaster. Does it really look any different?
I mean, it says 4K,
it's 4K
60, but like that doesn't matter to an extent about like. I mean, did they upgrade all the? No, they didn't.
They're not doing a ton of work to it. It's not like a remake.
This feels like a cash grab, man.
Right. Exactly.
Like, it doesn't even look like they updated the textures.
No, it doesn't. And look, this is not running in 4K. This is running in 720p.
Well, yeah,
if
it's 720, I can see the texture issues.
Absolutely.
Then I'm definitely going to see it in 4K.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually. Touche. So, too soon for this?
Yeah. Well,
look,
not necessarily even too soon, but like almost too little effort. Like, really make this look like the best racing game of all time. Then, like, all right, sure.
Because here's the thing about this game. This is like the last good Burnout in a lot of people's opinion.
Yeah.
This was kind of like the first arcade racing game that kind of nailed the open world, although at first it was a complete disaster. I don't know if you remember when this game launched, but it had all kinds of problems, and it did not do well out of the gate, but history ultimately has been very kind to it. And it just kind of turned into this cult favorite arcade racer, which, hey, I love the Burnout franchise. I always have. So it's definitely got a soft spot in my heart. But do we need this? Like, can we just do, like, backwards compatibility on Xbox One? And, like, does it really help the experience at all?
They get more money.
Right. I get to sell it for...
To be fair, they're putting effort into repackaging it, I guess. I mean, it really kind of depends on how much money they're going to charge for it.
Yeah, I don't think they've announced the price for it yet.
If this is like $15 or $19, then like, yeah, all right, you know what, guys? That's totally cool with me. If they try to do this like...
They're not going to sell it for 15 or $18.
I know, but I'm trying to say like how I would allow it. To be fair, if you give EA is discounting the crap out of everything, man. Like, just give it a couple months if you want to play Burnout. And
you think to be able to buy the original? You mean?
No, to play once this comes out, give it like 2 or 3 months, and you can buy it for $10.
Oh, really? So you're saying EA is discounting its new games really quickly?
Oh yeah.
Like, get an example.
like Andromeda.
Well, Andromeda,
all the stuff like
there was like 5 million copies sitting out there that people weren't
no,
buying.
I just mean on like digital. I just
really?
I just see those Origin sales come through, and I'm like, seriously, like
no, you're right. Some of those Origin
like
sales have been pretty
$6
insane.
for like Mass Effect is not a great game, but it's not a $6 game either.
But they've also been giving free games away on Origin lately. Like, just here, take the game for free. Like, just please use our freaking service.
I mean, I've got, Titanfall 2 is not, like, new anymore, but, like, I got that for, like, $8. That's a great game.
It is a great game, man. $8, spend it all day, every day.
It's like, thanks, man.
Yeah, the multiplayer is great in that, too, man.
And, like, I thought it was...
And the campaign's, like, incredible. Short, but incredible.
I thought it was $20 and went on to pay, and then, like, gets to the checkout screen for $8, and I'm like, did I got the right game? Did I accidentally get Titanfall 1? It's like, no, like, thanks.
What year did Paradise come out? Burnout Paradise.
I don't know.
Do you remember? Actually, I'm going to look it up real quick. Check out Sifted.
Let's zoom in over there. There we go. Oh, it's actual screen capture.
Oh, yeah, man. You haven't watched this show for a while, brah.
Oh, I never watch it. I listen to it.
2008. Okay.
Sorry, you just did a podcast to me.
Yeah, that's fine. However you want to consume it. Yeah, so 2008. It actually has been quite a while. It's been 10 years, a decade. That's more than I thought.
I still think they should have done more with the remaster. Like,
I mean, look at the game. This is a game. It looks great still.
I disagree.
You don't think it looks good still?
I think it looks dated. Yeah. I just also think the new one looks dated.
The remaster.
Yeah.
Well, you can only do so much unless you want to completely remake it and build it from the ground up, which might not be that bad of an idea.
That's kind of the premise, right? I mean, especially for a racing game, like, I feel like you could do more texture-wise and not break the bank. Like, you don't have to redo animations and stuff.
I mean, basically their selling point is 4K. That's what they keep flashing in the trailer, but it doesn't look great.
I mean, that's almost like we'll just go play the original Burnout on an emulator at 4K, and I bet it looks the same.
You're probably right.
Which means they just changed the value in an INI file, and now then they sold it to you. Right?
And going back to our earlier discussion, it probably runs at a better frame rate. The old version, running in 4K probably runs.
They'll probably layer on some bloom or whatever hot new effects they've got in their toolbox.
But. Whatever shader or whatever the heck they want. So, are you excited about this at all? This has, by the way, been like the top story on every video game podcast this week.
I don't know.
That's how slow things are right now.
I was never a huge Burnout fan, but like,
really,
if this is cheap, then sure, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Why not?
So what's the most you would pay for it? $20?
I mean, I'd probably wait for like 10.
10.
If I'm buying a 10-year-old game that looks like a 10-year-old game to me, then yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, it's funny because I would already own Kingdom Come Deliverance if it wasn't $60.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would say that, but...
Well, then don't price it at $60.
Well, it sold 1 million at $60 already.
I get it, but it could have been
2 million.
Could have been 10 million. Who knows?
I mean, look, PAX says that all the time. It's like, it's a math equation. It's, can you sell? But you're right. Like, look, if you can sell 2 million at 50, that's better than selling 1 million at 60.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very simple math, by the way. You don't need a calculator for that one. So, I don't know. To me, this is not that big of a deal. This game, for whatever reason, has achieved this mythical status. I think it's because the Burnout series since then has become such crap, or not crap, but it's been kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
And it's kind of gone away. And this is the one everyone points to. Like, this is the good one. This is the one that they should model future games after.
All their feedback is probably just, hey, why don't you just make Paradise again? And they're like,
okay.
Sure. That's a great idea, Johnny. Here you go for $60.
Yep. So I'm curious if chat is into this game. It seems like, I don't know, most of the response I've seen on Sifted has been kind of lukewarm. Reality Man UK, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime, by the way, man. You just gave us $2.50 completely free. That's awesome. People are saying Paradise is the last Burnout. There's 3 in revenge. My favorite Burnout was Burnout 2, to be honest with you. I mean, it didn't have the open world and all this. Yeah. Well, we have one couldn't care less. Yes. No. Forza Horizon 2 looks better. Agree with that. Without a doubt. Thank you, Sound Wizard, for subscribing on Twitch Prime.
I hadn't really considered that, but Forza Horizon it was really good. man.
Hell yeah!
And it looks great.
Are you kidding me? It's like the best driving game in the last, arcade driving game in the last, decade.
And I think it kind of, it fits nicely in this slot. So, if I was in the mood to play Burnout, I'd probably just go play Forza.
Yeah, that game is sublime, man. It's my favorite driving game in a really, really long time. And I think there's another one probably coming out this year, actually. At least I hope there is. I drafted it in my fantasy draft. It's been like clockwork every 2 years for the last, 6 years, so we'll see. It seems like kind of split, 50-50. Some people are into it, some people aren't. Some people brought up the Switch version. Why wouldn't there be a Switch version of this?
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously it's on last-gen hardware, and that's pretty much what the Switch is.
The
Switch is essentially a PS3 or an Xbox 360.
I don't think there's any big racing games on the Switch.
I don't think they're even doing the remaster for PC. I think it's only announced for PS4 and Xbox One.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it is what it is, but it seems like people are mostly split on whether they actually give a crap about it. And I don't. I played it back in the day. I don't need to play it again.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all good. All right, let's move on to our last topic of this here show. And as I said, I've been scraping the barrel trying to get games to play for you guys, games to cover on GameFace and for content. And some of my scraping scraped up some gold this week as I was able to finally play Warhammer Vermintide II. Are you a fan of Left 4 Dead?
No.
No. You didn't like those games.
I did not like it.
Well, I sent you a beta code for this.
I know.
And if you want to send it back, I can give it to one of the sifters.
I put it in Steam and had it all installed and stuff, and then I was looking on Sifted, and it described the game as a Left 4 Dead clone. I was like, oh.
You already redeemed the code?
I was so excited. Because if you look at just the footage like this, you're like, oh, sweet. Is this like Elder Scrolls Warhammer?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh.
Nope. It is essentially a Left 4 Dead clone set in the Warhammer universe. I am in the closed beta, and so is Brent, but apparently he'll never actually join up and play with me now.
I'll play.
But I do actually have an extra beta code for this that maybe I'll find an ingenious way to give away to one of our sifters, but it's for PC only, the beta. And I gave one to Matt because he's going to need something to do over the next week or 2 weeks while he licks his wounds a little bit. But
super pretty.
So it is gorgeous, man. The basic premise of it is Left 4 Dead. You play with teams of 4, and you just go through a series, or basically it's a big level that you go through. One thing that kind of sets it apart from Left 4 Dead is you don't have the safe houses at intervals throughout the level where you can stop and restock on ammo, regenerate your health and things like that. It is just one continuous slog, but to account for that, there are pickups everywhere where you pick up ammo for your guns. You can see I have a blunderbuss or whatever the hell they're called right there.
Yeah.
And there's in the beta there's I think 7 or 8 different characters you can choose from. They all have different abilities. They all carry.
Ouch.
Yeah, and you'll see here you can revive. You can be revived by teammates, and you can revive them as well. But the game itself is pretty simple. So you have a melee weapon, you have a gun, you have a special, and then you have potions and grenades and things like that. And they keep it simple because the action is what you really... And you can see their enemies will pick up your players.
Yeah.
And
slam them.
they do a lot more than that, too. There's some enemies that have psychic abilities, and they'll lift you up off the ground and bring you into them. And then one of your teammates needs to come in at that moment and attack them so that it breaks their concentration and drops you. It is an absolutely gorgeous game. When I talk about Left 4 Dead or whatever, that was last gen. Playing a game like this on my PC with a nice card, it's quite the mind opener. And gory is all get out. Not just gore, but detailed gore. You chop an enemy's leg off, you look down at their leg, and you'll see one of the aortas spraying blood out. It's pretty hardcore. And the reason they
don't let your kids play, guys.
No, definitely, yeah. Watch out, Trump's going to come after this game next. But if the reason the game is kind of simple mechanics-wise is because there are times where literally there are just hundreds and hundreds of enemies flooding the screen at a time. And you're trying to manage these mobs of enemies that are coming at you. And it's not like cut and paste enemies where you're fighting 80 of the same dude. There are certainly a little bit of that. But they do a good job of mixing it up. and providing sort of, some of them will have shields, and they'll actually use the shields, and you kind of have to preoccupy them while somebody comes in from the side and attacks from the side while they're not blocking that way. You also have defense, by the way. I should have brought that up. You can block and you can dodge.
Okay.
But the levels just kind of play out linearly. They're open-ish, but there's always a waypoint that kind of points you in the direction that you need to go. And then periodically you will come... See, here's where I'm talking about. Like, one of the enemies grabbed a hold of me, and then the other person comes in and chops at him, so he'll drop me. The levels are, to an extent, linear, but they're really big and open. There's only kind of one way to get through them, and there are waypoints that kind of point you in the direction you need to go at all time, like that shield you can see right there.
Yeah.
That's the icon that you need to follow. And there are objectives along the way, like this mission that you're seeing right now. There's a series of people who are being held in cages that you need to free. So there's objectives that evolve as you go through each level. It's not just kind of the same thing over and over again. And then there are boss battles. And the bosses in this game are absolutely incredible. In fact, you're about to see one here in a minute. I make the stupid mistake. You'll see here, there's a barn door that's sitting shut. And there's a thing on it that says it's open. And as soon as I go to open it, I didn't notice it when I was playing, but as soon as I go to open it, the chat explodes. And they say, don't open the door, don't open the door. And what do? I open the door. And out comes, I won't even spoil it. Here, you can see it right here. They're all telling me, you can't see the graphics covering it, but the chat right now is don't open the door, don't open the die! Yeah, there it is. And then it ends up being this massive freaking werewolf that comes out and you have to fight. The bosses take a lot of coordination to take down because they can drop you in a couple swipes or whatever. So a lot of it's distraction. You get your more powerful character to distract the enemy while everyone else kind of comes in from the side and the back and kind of chips them down.
Yeah.
There's leveling up in the game. After you finish each mission, you get literally XP, and then you have leveling. And every time you get a new level, you'll get new weapons that you can use for your arsenal for that character. There are loot boxes, of course. I don't know how much this game is going to cost. They haven't really announced the price of it yet, but they did just finally let Hunt Showdown go out of early access, and it's $30, which I was pretty shocked at. So I'm guessing this game's probably going to come in around there, around $30. I'm guessing they haven't announced it yet, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But I've been playing this game for 2 days, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
I don't know how you're watching this. You don't think it looks like fun?
No, it does look like fun. It's a lot more fun than Left 4 Dead to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I have friends who were way hardcore into Left 4 Dead and just begged me to play it. And I'd get with them and play it for a night or two and never really go back to it. And I think a big part that helps too is that this is, 10 years later.
Yeah.
And the game is just flipping gorgeous. And it helped too that I played with people who were really good and were much higher level than me that kind of carried me at times. But you know what? Sometimes I carried them because the characters are so different that you do need a well-constructed team to actually succeed.
Yeah.
Because there were some magic casters on my team that with just one spell would literally just disintegrate 50 enemies at once. And when you start dealing with the really big hordes, you need it.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you have a well-composed team in order to be able to topple all the big enemies. Because I was a noob, but I deal a lot of damage. So a lot of times the enemies kind of latch on to the higher level characters and go after them.
Yeah.
So while they were attacking them from the front, I just would come up behind and just start hacking and just taking off huge chunks of the health. And again, you can see here in the scene coming up here, this just a horde of enemies starts coming. And look, this game never slows down, dude. Look at those, and there's literally
so many rats.
100 enemies coming through that little hole, and one of my teammates is sparking off spells, and it just runs like greased lightning. And I have a good PC. I don't have a PC like you and Matt. Mm-hmm. I have an i5 with 32 gigs of RAM and a GTX 1080. I can't run 4K games at 60 frames per second or anything close, really. So I have
that's what I have.
Okay. So I have a decent rig, but not a monstrosity like Matt Kyle does with dual Titans or whatever.
Yeah, I do not have more than one Titan.
Yeah,
or even one.
So I'm really impressed with how this game runs. This game is, it's not done. It's still got some time left to go in the cooker. The beta has a lot of content in it. There are story missions that are kind of narrative driven, not a ton of cutscenes. But there is sort of a premise that you go in each level with. And then there's quick play, and that's what you're seeing right now is just a quick play where you just go through a map with some teammates that you join up with. So
are these people you knew, or did it just match up?
No, it just matched me up with these folks. And how the game starts is when you go into matchmaking, and then it spawns you into what's called the Keep. You'll see at the end of this mission when we finish it what the Keep is like. And it's just basically this environment that you go into, and there are places to buy stuff like new weapons and new clothes to customize your characters with. After you finish the match and you get like a loot box or two, there's a pedestal in the center of the Keep that you go to actually get the stuff from your loot boxes. And there's a board where you go to select what mission you want to play. Okay. And once you select that mission, there's an area that opens up in the Keep, and once all 4 players get into that area, you get warped out to the level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's Vermintide II. I was a big fan of the first game as well. I was a big proponent of it here on Sifted. And I think I actually convinced a couple people to buy it who later messaged me and said thank you. They were very happy that I had...
That's awesome.
Which makes me feel good. Yeah, I love when stuff like that happens. So if I ever give you good advice, reach out to me at Shane on the site. It makes me feel good to hear that I've turned you guys on to something you really ended up enjoying. But I am loving this. Like this weekend, like I'm going to play this game.
Well,
I also love Hunt Showdown, by the way.
I'll play with
also great. And jump on and play with me this weekend, man. I think if you give it a little bit of a whirl, spend a little time with it, you'll enjoy it. And again, it's versatile. You don't have to play with the melee guy like I did. Like everybody has a gun, but my gun was essentially the shotgun that took forever to reload, so I didn't use it all that often. But there are some characters that their primary weapon is a gun, or their primary attack is spells, and they're kind of the ranged people who can... And they're not like, hey, here's this bow, you need to fire one arrow to take out... It's kind of like Ashe from League of Legends, where she has like one bow, but it fires like 5 or 6 arrows. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm having a blast with this game, man. It is gory. It's an M-rated game. It's not for the faint of heart. And the gore is extremely realistic, and because it is such a beautiful game, it has a little bit of an added impact, I think. But just the art and the vistas, like there's lots of times where I just come up over a hill in this game and I'm like, whoa.
Sweet.
Like at the beginning, I don't know if you saw, but there's like that huge field of grain.
Yeah.
That type of foliage in this game is prevalent. And some of the enemies are so small that you can't see them. You can just see
the grain moving?
You just see the grain rustling. And
That's
it just,
awesome.
Yeah, it makes your heart like jump and you're like, oh my gosh, where are they? Yeah, you can see to the left there, like the foliage is really deep. But I'm having a blast with this. Like I said, I do have one extra beta code for this that I will try to figure out a way to give away to one of you sifters. Don't take it if you don't have a PC, or you don't have a PC that can run a game that looks like this one, because you're just going to waste it. Or you're going to go sell it on G2A or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's my time with Warhammer Vermintide 2. I've had a blast with it. I highly recommend it just based upon what I've played so far, and it's not even the finished game. We'll wait to see what the price is at. That could be a bit of a deterrent, but I really love the first game. I like this one even more. It's certainly more pretty, and it seems to be a little better tuned for multiple players than the first one was. So there you go, Vermintide 2. That brings us to our trailer of the week, people. And it was another slow week in trailers, but today we were saved by the bell, which was a TV show that reared Brent into adulthood. By the way, have you seen that series on YouTube where they go and they...
Zach Morris is a dick or whatever?
Yes!
Yeah,
I just discovered it like a month ago.
Oh my gosh.
It is amazing.
It's so cringy because I remember that stuff happening and being like, God, that wasn't very nice. And then he like really goes into like, no, you don't understand how not nice Zach Morris is.
It's not even that. It's that show was insane. Like the first one I ever watched was Zach ran into a homeless girl that went to his school. And the thing that's so funny about that, the way they do that show, is that they point out how absurd the show is. And like the motivations for why he does stuff. Like he meets this homeless girl and then he offers he tries to put a move on her. Like, go watch that. Is it BuzzFeed that does that? It's some big media company that does that series.
Or like College Humor or somebody. It's one of those.
Yeah, I can't remember who it is. Watch that show. It is freaking hilarious. Anyway, we were saved by the bell by this little indie game that was debuted today. It's called Carrion. It's by the developers who created a game called Butcher, which, as you might have guessed, is an extremely violent game. This game is also violent, but the twist is it's basically Aliens where you are the alien. except you're not an alien. You're this gelatinous blood mass.
Sweet.
Let's roll it. So there you go. You're essentially like a blood clot.
I want to play that. It looks sweet.
It does look sweet. Somebody clarified in our chat, by the way, that Vermintide 2 is $30. So I nailed it just guessing.
Right.
Which, I guess I'll have to see how much content's in the final game. That might be a little bit of
one of the nice things about Left 4 Dead was you could buy like a 4-pack for like $60 or something.
Yeah.
Like they made a good deal out of it if you had
They
some
did.
friends. Maybe they'll do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, $30 is maybe a little steep, but again, it depends on the content. But I mean, I don't know. That's like a AAA game. Like those boss fights are no joke. They're a lot of fun. I don't know. Maybe it is worth $30. We'll see. Let's get some questions. I forgot to mention before we threw to the trailer of the week that you guys should get your questions in. But some of you are just very well trained at this point anyway. Here's one from The Legacy. What is your view on BT from Titanfall 2, the robot from Infinite Warfare, and Trico as companions? I liked them. Also, since you guys are looking for good indie games, try Celeste. I heard great things about it. The robot from Infinite Warfare, I was not a big fan of.
Which was the robot from Infinite Warfare?
Call of Duty, Infinite Warfare.
I know. I swear I played it. What was the? Oh! I get it. Okay. No, I didn't care about him at all.
Yeah.
But I did
It's
like.
hard to
I did like the
impart-
dude in Titanfall 2.
Yeah, I did too. But it's very hard to make the player care about robots, I think.
Yeah.
It's just like you're a machine, bro. Like if you break, we'll just fill you with some more oil and like fix a wire and you're good. Like they haven't done a good job of humanizing like robots in games. I don't believe anyway.
I mean, invariably they're the ones that like sacrifice themselves for something, and it's
Yeah. And you're like, well, it's not like you got
Thanks.
family at home
Yeah,
that are going to miss you.
It's not like you count.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's hard to humanize androids, cyborgs, robots.
I don't know, unless your game is about AI being
Like Detroit.
Yeah, unless it's about their right to live and like I mean the concept of souls and stuff like that, where
Right.
it's like
That's
they
intriguing.
don't have a soul, and it's like, well, I don't think we do
Unless
either,
the whole
so
game is
it's all
about
fine,
trying
yeah.
to humanize robots.
Yeah, if it's about that, then that's fine. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It's funny. Like I mentioned Dog from Half-Life, and it's like, you know, he counts to me because because he's a dog,
Yeah.
not because he's a robot.
Right. Because he's a robot that looks like a dog.
Because he loved me.
Here's a question from OTAF directly related to what we were just talking about. Is $30 too much for multiplayer-only games? We have had examples of Overwatch and OG Titanfall being more than that, at least on console. What price do you think they should be? Should give away the Vermintide 2 on today's top score. It's a good call.
Wouldn't PUBG's $30 too, right?
Yep.
I mean,
That seems to be the price.
whether-
Hunt Showdown, $30, multiplayer only.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the new. I don't know.
Standard. It's half.
I mean, like
It's half of.
wasn't Battlefront like 60? Like
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially paying like $30 for the campaign in a lot of games.
no, I mean like Battlefront 1 that didn't even have
Right,
a campaign.
right,
That was
right.
full release. So like I think 30 is a much more reasonable price point.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, if you start thinking about value, what you're getting for each dollar spent, $30 for a multiplayer game that you end up getting really hooked on is like the best deal ever.
Yeah.
Because look, there's a lot of people that buy Call of Duty every year and never even play the campaign or zombies. They get it just
Or vice versa.
Right. And they get it just to play the multiplayer. And they're paying $60 for that every year without fail. That's never going to change.
Yeah.
So you start thinking about it. I mean, yeah, maybe $30 is okay. If it's a game that you're going to get hooked on and addicted to, I think once you do that, though, the whole prospect of loot boxes starts to get a little dicey.
Getting a little dicier, and
You have to think a lot harder about that at that point. And look, Vermintide 2 does have loot boxes. But from what I gathered, it wasn't like you were getting, and I've only played it to get enough to get like 10 loot boxes at this point or whatever, but it didn't seem to me like most of the stuff I was getting from loot boxes were game-changing things that would make me more powerful in battle.
Yeah.
They weren't even necessarily cosmetic, though. Like, they weren't hats and stuff like that. They were weapons. But if I looked at the weapon strength on them, they seemed to be pretty well balanced. But that's a slippery slope. I mean, they could start fiddling with that stuff where, hey, here's this new halberd that, for whatever reason, does like an extra 10% damage, and the internet figures it out, and everybody buys it. It's just like I've talked about before with League of Legends. Like, they launch a new champ. The champ is always OP. Everybody buys a champ, then they nerf it so that they balance the game before it ever gets put into an LCS or competition. So, anytime there's loot boxes, there's the possibility of something like that happening. It's just the way it is. But so far, what I've seen of the loot boxes in Vermintide II, they've not been egregious. So, yeah, I guess $30 is, I think we're saying that's okay. As long as it's good. As long as it's a multiplayer that gets you hooked.
Yeah, I mean, the premise of a multiplayer game is you play forever, so it's kind of like, well, whatever value you put is easy to defend. Like,
I haven't seen too many people complaining about $30 for PUBG.
No, but they also have loot boxes now, too,
They do.
with the key system and shit, too.
I have a feeling that game, to
be fair, it's all cosmetic.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, I actually really like the way they've done loot boxes where the pricing resets every week.
Yeah, I like that too.
So there's a benefit to like, if I can't play much, like at least I'll play enough to get the one loot box this week.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, it's a good idea.
Get my free brown shirt again, but like a chance at something cool.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if it comes out for PS4 and they've kind of squeezed that turnip for all it's worth if the game goes free to play.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think it'll ever go free to play?
No, not when people are going to pay $30 for it.
But people are stopping paying $30 for it, though. That's the thing. Like,
I don't know. I think it would be a very bad thing for the game. Actually, like one of the cheaters is the biggest issue with the game on PC, and they go through and ban like millions of people, and then they just go buy it again because they're making more selling their cheats and stuff like that. But like, if you do that, all of a sudden they just have another free-to-play copy, and so like you never get rid of the cheaters.
So what you're saying is right now the $30 barrier keeps the cheating to
at least somewhat limited.
Yeah, but isn't it really on PUBG Corp to make a game that people can't cheat in?
Yes.
So is it really the answer though, them to improve their code?
No, it's pretty clear that the core. I shoot this gun and it hits that guy system is client side instead of being server side, which is absolutely
that's a big
bananas.
Mistake. Yeah, that's where it's coming from.
There'll always be like aimbots and stuff, but like people being able to teleport, like what in the world? How is that a thing that you're not checking for on the server side?
Because it was an indie game built by one dude.
Because it was just like a very small team.
It's kind of like you think about like an old website like IGN, for example. Like it was built back in like the 90s, and that's its foundation. It was built on that tech from the 90s. So IGN has had problems. It's fine now, but there was a period of like 8 years there where they were trying to transition from that old backbone, that old admin, over to make an IGN a modern website, and it was bad.
Yeah.
Like, they just could not get it over the hump, and I'm guessing they eventually probably just completely replatformed or something and had to migrate all that stuff over, but games are the same way. It's like you build it on this foundation, and this is the code that it has, and it's like, so what do? You take it down while you completely revamp it? A lot of times you get kind of caught in between there a little bit. So I don't know for a fact that that's what happened here, but
I mean, even games like Counter-Strike, which have been which is more or less like permanently out, it has cheats and stuff. It's just Valve has put a lot of effort into finding those cheats.
Yeah. And that's something PUBG is going to have to do as well.
PUBG is just, I mean, like, I guess it's been out for a year now, but like,
has it been a year?
It still feels young just because they've been growing at such a ridiculous pace. So like they have grown faster than they are able to take care of for the cheats.
Maybe they need to stop worrying about adding content to it, and they need to focus more on fixing what's there.
I think they have hired so many people that like
maybe they can
do both of those things. And like a lot of software development is, I have to use this analogy all the time at work, but like 9 moms cannot have a baby in 1 month. Like, some things just take 9 months, and there's
Right.
no way around it. I'm sorry. So, like, if you need, there is a maximum amount of people that can work on redoing that hit code or whatever. Throwing money or people at that problem will not make it happen any faster. Actually, throwing people at it more often than not will slow it down.
You need to throw a couple really good people at it.
Yeah, and then just get it done.
Yeah. We'll see.
I mean, it has been getting better, so I'm hoping that sticks.
Here's Case Money. There are some ambitious PC MMORPGs in development. Do you think there is still a market for them to succeed?
This guy.
You still play MMORPGs.
All the time, man.
Matt does too. I don't play him at all. I've never been a fan of that genre.
Yeah,
What ones are you looking forward to? Is there anything on your radar right now?
No, not at all. I don't even know what's coming out, so I'm a bad person to ask, but, like, whenever they do come out, I'll definitely check them out. Like,
we can go to the site right.
I've been really big into, like, EVE and Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, like, all of those guys. So, like, and it's not like any of those games are hurting.
Here's something you can only find on Sifted: an entire channel dedicated to MMORPGs, and we'll see if there's anything there. Well, Terra is coming to consoles. Nope. There's like nothing. World of Warcraft, Ashes of Creation.
There'll be another World of Warcraft this year.
Warframe. Final Fantasy XIV. And now we're back. This is February 1st, so there's not a lot of Ashes of Creation again, World of Warcraft, EVE Online. Closers. There's one, but that looks like it's from Japan.
Head back to the chat. What's he talking about? That's coming. That's exciting.
He
I don't know. It's
he
easy
doesn't
to get
list any
lost.
examples. Case Money, give us some examples of what you're talking about.
To answer your question, there's definitely a market for it.
Yeah.
I mean, even
Do you think
World
it's a
of
dwindling market?
No, I just think it's spreading out. Like,
Yeah.
World of Warcraft doesn't have 15 million subscribers anymore. It probably has like 7 or 8 though.
Yeah.
That's a lot, man.
Yeah, it is.
That is a lot of people to pay $15 a month.
Yep.
And then every
money in the bank.
Then every 2 years pay $60 again for the new thing. Like,
yeah.
There's a lot going on there. And then, like, EVE does fine for itself by just being kind of a smaller scale thing. And Final Fantasy XIV is, by all accounts, doing really well.
I mean, it had probably its best year ever last year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk to people who are into
its expansions are great.
Yeah, the last one, I think I read somewhere, it was like the best like expansion to an MMORPG like ever, which is saying a lot. There's been a lot of MMORPG expansions.
Yeah.
Goji Gogo, Brent, any thoughts on Sega bass fishing? Inquiring minds want to know. You said you really like fishing in games.
So
earlier.
I don't like fishing games. I like fishing in other games.
Fair enough.
I realized that was a little...
That's great.
I wasn't as specific as I should have been. But Monster Hunter World has great fishing.
Does it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you would ever do it. There's really no reason to. When you could spend your time hunting a monster.
Right, yeah.
But, like, it's there and it's fishing, man. And, like, you can run around and find the different fish. Like, you can actually see them in the water. So you can, like, actually cast towards them and stuff. I don't know. I like it.
Wow. Well, there you go. Pro tip.
But it's not an efficient way to get anything done in that game. Just go hunt monsters.
Here's one from Bloomg. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. That's how Pac says it when he asks questions. What games teach you in real life ability, learning a language, learning history, etc.? So I think he's probably riffing off of the recent Discovery Tour expansion to Assassin's Creed Origins. That's my guess anyway. Edutainment.
The education thing?
Yeah. Has any game taught you a language or anything valuable?
I mean, I've had games make me look stuff up.
Yeah.
Like, Deus Ex Machina made me look up what the hell Deus Ex Machina meant in 1998 or whatever. You know, I learned what that was.
I mean, I think Assassin's Creed has, in all honesty, like had me going on Google, like Googling stuff to figure out like what was historically accurate, what wasn't.
I know a lot of historical gun names. Just from all of gaming. Like,
oh yeah, no, that's a good point.
So people
Call
will say
of Duty
something
has
in a
taught
movie,
me a lot
I'm
about
like,
weapons.
I'm like, oh hey, that's a Styrohawk, sweet, man.
Yeah, Call of Duty's taught me a lot about guns.
Did you know that's $4,300 in Counter-Strike?
That's funny. Eternal Darkness taught me a fake language. Did you play Eternal Darkness? So you had you could build your own spells in that game. So you get runes, and then you'd stack them in order, and then it would create a spell. And every time you cast that spell, it would say each rune Paragon, Argon, Lygon. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
What was it like?
Let's see. Danny Endurance, are you going to bust out the PlayStation VR headset for Moss on Tuesday? Things are so damn dry, I just might.
Do it.
And he says dust off. It literally dust off. At first this year, I was going to start using VR to get in shape. But then I realized the way my living room is set up, we have our TV against the wall with an entertainment center underneath it. And there's 7 feet and then the couch. And the way the PlayStation Eye works for games that will actually get you into shape, you need to be way far away, and it needs to be able to see your whole body with the Move controller. So I would have to pull the Eye out, put it on the couch or the ottoman facing the rest of the living room, and I would have to be standing perpendicular to the TV to do it. And I just haven't done it. So Moss, it seems you can just sit there and play it, and it does look like one of the more robust games that have been available for PlayStation VR, so I do have my eye on it. I'm not going to commit to playing it just yet, though.
One of my
desperate times call for desperate measures.
One of my best friends growing up did all the audio for it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
I met their boss guy and stuff. They're all super nice. So.
Let's see. We'll answer a couple more. From Vox91, when do you think, if ever, will there be a breaking point for microtransactions in AAA or big-budget games? I think we may be at it.
I mean, I think we're there. We're hitting the limits of what people are willing to accept, especially for non-cosmetic stuff.
I mean, I think the breaking point was Battlefront 2. I mean, when the fan uprising, the internet furor, basically made it sell a little over half of what the game before did. And it was a much better game. And it had a campaign, which the first one didn't have.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, the campaign's not very good.
I enjoyed it. It's not great, though.
It is not what I was... I think Battlefield 1 has a great campaign. It's short, but, it's sweet. And, I'm totally fine with that method of game making. Battlefront 2, it just, keeps going with, boring shootouts. And I'm just this is Star Wars and you made it boring. What in the world?
I still enjoyed the time I spent with it. It wasn't the best campaign I played last year. It wasn't even probably in the top 20 campaigns that I played last year. Maybe even not 30. But I still enjoyed playing it. It was Star Wars.
Pretty far down there, man.
I play a lot of games, Brent. A lot of games. And a lot of good games, too. I'm fortunate that I can tend to just pick and choose and play the really good stuff. So I enjoyed the campaign, but I agree with you.
I was bummed.
All right, last one. Super Cordon Bleu. What do you guys think about the Magic Leap mixed reality headset?
I'm not even sure what that is.
Oh, you aren't?
No.
I think it's a farce. I think
you don't think it exists?
It does exist. They technically just had, I think Shaq was wearing it on some show. It was the first time it was really shown in public. There have been a couple images leaked out from the company from people who worked there, and those images, basically it was a headset and you had a backpack that you wore around.
Wow.
They have billions of dollars. They have received more funding than you could even fathom. It's Star Citizen level, but Star Citizen actually has something to show.
Star Citizen, but add a zero.
So Magic Leap right now, the word around the industry is that it's just all a big facade, and that the head of Magic Leap has taken all the money because the people who are working there aren't getting paid that much. And so it's another case of hey, where did all that money go? The System Shock remaster. Dude, they had $2 million and they burned through it already and don't have any more money. Dude, what's going on there is people are hey, I'm big developer guy and I'm used to getting paid big developer money. And so we got $2 million. I'm taking my usual salary out of that $2 million. That's not how it works. It's if I had started Sifted thinking I was going to make the same money I was making at Viacom, it would have literally lasted 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's not even an exaggeration. It would have lasted 2 weeks. So when you start doing stuff like this, you strike out on your own, you want to do something, you got to make sacrifices. You can't just go in there and be like, yeah, we're going to make what we would make if we were working at Warner Brothers. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
This typical startups, or a lot of startups are that way, and that's how a lot of startups fail.
When you get funded. Yeah.
Yeah. They just are like, well, this is what I should get paid, and this is what I'm going to get paid, and if not, I'm going to leave, and instead they stay, and they soak up all that money, and there's not enough to go around for everybody else, and then you end up with stuff like the System Shock remaster, where it's like, project's not even half finished, and they've already burned through all the crowdfunding money. So, yeah. I think Magic Leap is bordering on being like one of the most legendary like pieces of vaporware hardware ever. They haven't really shown anything other than putting out these little augmented reality videos on like their Twitter page or whatever, like, and they have burned serious money. The thing is, though, is if it does end up being real, it could absolutely be a game changer, because what they're shooting for and what it does is absolutely incredible if they could actually get it to work and it's actually portable and it's not like you're carrying around like 40 pounds of gear on your back.
Right.
But that's been the problem so far, is they cannot get the form factor down to a place where it's really ready for consumers. So the idea is that it's
going
like
to cost like $2,000 or whatever.
The idea of it is that it's supposed to be HoloLens for the rest of us, basically.
Yeah.
And so far, they've pretty much struck out, and they've spent a ton of money, and people are wondering like what the hell's going on, and they're wondering if it's like a scam at this point. So
I hope not, man. Like, I really like the idea of
AR.
I want to wear HoloLens glasses.
Yeah.
I want that.
I want a HoloLens. HoloLens looks freaking awesome.
I'm just not sure we're ready, man. I think
it's
in
too much.
I think in 5-10 years, your phone will be the driver for it, and it'll just connect, and that'll be that. But like,
probably
these standalone things, I don't think are the answer.
Those
like,
mixed reality headsets, they're all coming out at like $400. Like, was it Lenovo's or someone's that just came out this week? It's just like, bro, your kid's gonna die. Yeah. Nobody wants this. Like, all the R&D you put into this, like, who is running these companies? Who? Just people who are ignorant to what reality is, I guess. They're just like, we need something to show at CES every year.
I know, right?
I mean, that's really kind of what it comes down to.
CES bait.
We need to get people into our booths to look at our laptop, so let's dump like $100 million into this R&D for this dumbass helmet that we're going to make. Whatever. So that's it for GameFace 118. Brent, great episode, brother. That was fun. I had a blast. Hope you guys did as well. I'm not giving up on our new show, by the way. I'm trying to figure out what we need to do with it, because I know the show can work. The first episode I thought was really great. If you haven't watched the archive on Sifted yet, go do it. The problem is it does rely on participation. So I'm thinking about maybe streaming for the first time ever on YouTube. That could be, it makes me very, very nervous to stream on YouTube.
So you'd stream on both, or you'd switch to YouTube?
Well, we can't. Our TriCaster, it can stream on anything, but it can't stream on two places at the same time.
Okay.
So I'd have to pick or choose. But, we have like 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and with a show that needs to be driven by people who are actually tuning in live, I think it might have a chance to do much better on that service than it does on Twitch, because we have like 2,000 subscribers on Twitch. So I'm going to figure it out. The show's not going away, because I think the first episode, other than the technical issues and the hurdles that I got over and was totally prepared to nail yesterday, you guys didn't show up to see it. I think the show, the production and the quality is already going to be much better, and the discussion was great in the first episode. So I'm not going to give up, but stay tuned to our Twitter, to sifted.net, and we'll let you know where it's going to go up next. One thing is I'll be sure of next time is to promote it well beforehand, because I think one mistake I made was assuming that the same way we get enough people to watch GameFace, that would work for today's high score as well. And it doesn't, because people see GameFace, they're like, I know what that is, I'm going to go watch it.
Right.
And when that popped up in people's...
Eventually you'll get there.
Yeah. So anyway, we're not giving up. I put too much work into this show to just give up after one episode. So even as salty as I am over that a second episode of coming all the way in here for nothing, I'm not giving up. I put too much into it, and I think you guys will like it and enjoy being a part of it. So I think that's it. On behalf of Brent, myself, Sam the man, GameFace is up and out.